for, okay, the recording has started. Request from the floor for anybody that's attending now that has something they want to speak to the Planning Commission tonight for an item that is not on tonight's agenda. And as I said before, we are using Zoom. So if you are on Zoom and you want to speak, you click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you are in by telephone, then what you do is dial *9, and that will effectively raise your hand and wait to be recognized. So anybody, any comments to the commission just in general tonight?
I don't see any hands raised. And my apologies for the recording error there. I don't know what happened.
That's fine. All right, we'll move to the director's report, which was in the file. Any questions or comments, or anybody want clarifications, anything like that? Or have Kelly go over his report?
Yeah, I wasn't going to really go into it much tonight just because we have a pretty full agenda. I did put the 2 upcoming meetings, which are the typical 4th Mondays. I think Jerry and I will have to talk about the December meeting and even maybe pull the commission, or because I think that's the same week as Christmas, and I don't think we should hold it that week. Other than that, the director's report for this month just has recent decisions of note, which are just a few of them on there, and then some of the bigger applications of note that in this case, all 3 of those will be heard by the Planning Commission in the next few months.
Okay, any other discussion from any commissioner? Questions of Kelly, or just general discussion that you'd like to have amongst ourselves?
Kelly, do you think we're going to need a December meeting?
It's a really good question. Potentially. I think with 3 large subdivisions too, you don't know if anyone's ever going to request a continuance on any of those, or even on the apartments. So I would guess that we'll have at least 1 more meeting in 2021. If we do have a December meeting, I think we could do it the first half of the month. I don't think there's any reason to put it at the back half of the month. I know, like for myself, I'm going to try to take some time off around Christmas. So, and I think just from like an equity standpoint and from trying to get public participation at our meetings, I think it's bad to have anything too close to Christmas.
Yeah, I just didn't know if since we have everybody here, just quickly look at the calendar and just kind of, as opposed to doing a survey and going through all that hassle. The first half, the Monday would be the 13th, but that's council meeting, I guess, right? The second Monday.
The second Monday is not council, so the 13th, as far as I'm aware, would be available.
So I would just throw out, does 13th look okay on people's calendar?
Yeah, it's okay on mine.
Just to reserve it, and then Kelly, you can tell us what you want.
Yeah, I mean, that night works for me as well. So if we have a quorum and other commissioners agree that's a good night, then I'll pencil that in for a tentative date.
Okay, I'll put down a hold and you let us know.
Okay, will do.
So Kelly, one other quick question. Are you going to send out, I know you did a while ago, but which commissioners' terms end in December? I think mine does.
Yeah, that was the plan. I know the city recorder, Jeff Aprati, we were talking about that about a month ago. I think it just kind of fell off our radar. So thanks for the reminder. I think Jeff and Emily are going to actually kind of take on the interview process this time around. I just needed to get that off my plate because I just have so much going on right now. Not that Emily or Jeff don't, but Emily's going to assume that role moving forward as being the main staff contact for the interviews for planning commissioners. But Yes, thanks for the reminder. I'll make sure to talk to Jeff and Emily about that in the next few weeks and hopefully send out an email pretty soon.
Thanks.
Because I think that the council decided they wanted to post each time we have somebody up for a term ending, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct. I mean, that was the previous council's direction, at least, unless the new council has 3 new members. So I don't know if that's going to be their still their direction, but I would anticipate that that will be how it's done this time around as well.
Okay.
And I do think, to answer Commissioner McLean-Wenzel's question, I do believe there's 4 people up for it. One thing I would like to explore, and I would have to talk to our attorney's office, but I would like to move away. Right now we're on like a 4 and 3. And what I'd like to move to is a 2, 2 and 1, or something where we don't potentially have 4 commissioners flipping at once. I think it's just, if that was to happen, that would be really bad for the commission, I think.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So I don't know how we do that because the terms are 4-year terms, but maybe we can make an exception and make a few of them 5-year terms to get them on off years or something. I'm going to try to explore that though.
Okay.
I don't like that we're on a 4 and a 3. I just don't like that for continuity's sake.
Mm-hmm. I agree. We've been fortunate that we haven't had a big major turnover at any time, but the perfect storm is waiting.
And if you did 5 years, then you would have Stephen and I up at the same time as the people that had 5 years. Right.
Very good. Very good point. Yeah. So I don't know what the solution is, but I would like to find a way to get it off of the current track, I guess, of 4 and 3.
Mhm.
You can always take the current 4-year guy people and cut them in half, make them 2 years and then re-up it too.
2 of them 2 years, 2 of them 4 years. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Flip a coin to see
Well,
who it is.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think, just as a thought, I think the ultimate strategy might be, Kelly, 2, 2, 2, and 1 over 4 years. And that way you always have some people rotating and it's the number getting to there is whatever we might need, the council might need to agree and to maybe have it, some people have it like a new term, there's only 3 years or something, so, I think the objective is very, very good. And I just suggest you figure out a way to make it work.
All righty. I think we can move on. We now, we for the first time in quite a while, we have some old business to attend to. And this is, I'm trying to remember, I was looking in the minutes, if we continued this.
Yes, you did, to a date certain to tonight.
So I'm just going to pick it up as a new, this is a legislative order because it deals with code. We'll be making a recommendation to City Council. So let me see my time here, at 6:46, we will open the public hearing. This is file 21-032 Design Code Amendment. And I'll call for any abstentions from anybody on the commission. Any conflicts of interest to declare? This is the easy part. We go right to staff report. So bring us up to date.
Thank you, Chairman. Last time I actually didn't have a PowerPoint for you, and it's still very brief, I promise you. But let me share my screen here. It's a very technical code update in a lot of ways, and that's why I didn't do like a slideshow last time, but I just wanted to use the slideshow tonight to kind of bring you up to speed from where we were in August. So hopefully any of the members of the commission that did not attend the August meeting, if you had a chance to watch the August meeting. If not, I think the item only lasted maybe 30 minutes on the agenda, so it's not like we had a super robust conversation. And it was mainly in regards to one section that I had asked the commission for clarification on, because I did not like how I had put it together. And I wanted a little bit more time to work with our consultant ESA and our city attorneys group to redo that code section. So I'll just jump right in here. So as Chairman Crosby said, it is a type 4 legislative hearing tonight. It's for 2 code chapters, chapter 1732, which is the code chapter, the zoning district chapter that actually talks about parkland, and 1786, which is the development standards section for parkland dedication and fee in lieu of, and then also open space. The first hearing was on August 23rd, and the commission decided to continue it to this evening. The primary code modifications since August 23rd were subsections C and D in section 1786-10. That was done by attorney Chris Crean. So if you have any questions about those changes, I would direct them to Mr. Crean. We also looked at the entirety of section 1786-20. This was the section in August that I told the commission that I did not like how I had put it together and I wanted more time to look at it. I spent quite a bit of time with ESA, who is our consultant for the master plan. And we also had our attorney's office look at that section after ESA and I updated it. And then portions of section 1786-40 were also modified by City Attorney Crean. He had a second chance to kind of look back through that section again and made some further clarifications to the code edits. So again, if you have questions about that, I would direct them to Mr. Crean. The other reviewing bodies, just to let you know, there's a lot of people looking at this. I think there's 5 or 6 internal staff members looking at these code changes, plus I think 3 people with ESA, who is the Parks and Trails Master Plan consultant. So we asked for their expertise to help write some of this code sections, since they are the ones that have the expertise in park development and planning, not our staff. And then we're also actually gonna, after tonight, after your recommendation, we're actually going to bring it before the Parks and Trails Advisory Board on October 6th. So it's a little unusual, but how that will work is that you'll hopefully make a recommendation tonight, and then the Parks and Trails Board will have a chance to make any further recommendations with your edits or recommendations in mind. And then that will be brought forth to the planning or to the city council, hopefully in October. In addition to that, Dawn Robertson, who is the Parks and Trails Advisory Board Chair, who has been a parks director all around the state of Oregon, including Ashland, the city of Gresham, the entirety of Metro, and some other municipalities. He's actually been reviewing the code and has made some suggestions as well. So I think with him involved especially, I feel very confident moving forward with the code edits and knowing that we've had some real professionals that do park development take a look at it. There's one additional code edit, and this comes actually from Mr. Robertson, the Parks and Trails Advisory Board Chair. He said he was looking at this section and he thought it needed additional clarification to also contain recommendations around wetlands. So historically, 1786-20G has only talked about the amount of slope that can be in an active parkland. We had made some modifications to that based on some recommendations from ESA, the wording of that. And then this is additional edits as reviewed by our city attorney's office, also including wetland in there, so that if we were to get parkland dedicated to the city, that, you know, not more than 25% of the park for a neighborhood or community park may exceed 15% slope or contain wetlands. And then for mini parks, kind of the same thing, but because mini parks are so small, they're usually like a quarter acre to an acre, we went with even a less percentage. So these are the main edit. These are the only edits that staff is recommending in addition to what's in the packet tonight. And these were just written by and reviewed by our attorney's office today. So that's why I'm just presenting them in this slideshow for the first time. And then the recommendation stays the same, is that staff is recommending that Planning Commission review the proposed code amendments, take public testimony, and make a recommendation to the City Council.
Kelly, just a question that comes to my mind. When we look at what's in front of us tonight and we make a recommendation to city council based upon what we look at, but what you said about it going to the advisory council and perhaps some others, it could conceivably change furthermore.
Possibly, yeah.
What does that mean to our recommendation? Will council just say, this is what we saw and recommended, and be able to, you'd probably say to them, the advisory council has recommended such and such a change. So they would know that
Correct.
the
Correct.
planning commission did not see it and did not act on that.
So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so that's what I would do. I would forward them your recommendations. So the code edit they will get will be the code edits with your recommendations. And then if the Parks and Trails Board makes any additional edits, I will forward those additional edits probably in like a memo format to the city council for additional consideration. I know that so far, at least, Mr. Robertson has looked at the different codes and he had a few small edits in 1732, but it was just adding kind of some clarification to a few of the uses, and it doesn't really change anything substantive. The only substantive thing that he had sent me so far was the edit that I just showed in the slideshow. And I haven't heard anything else from him on any other big changes that he would be recommending. That's not to say that the other Parks Board members might not have some, but he, you know, he has the 40 years of parks planning experience on that board. So I'm thinking that if he doesn't see any other big changes that are needed, the likelihood of the other board members having big changes is probably rather low.
Yeah, I think with the number of eyes that have looked at it, the big changes are behind us.
I hope so.
Or in front of us on paper, depending on how you want
Yeah.
to look at it. Okay, well, we will move into public testimony at this time. And we do it in three groups. One will be those that are in favor of these proposed changes. And then those who are not in favor. And then finally for any just neutral testimony. So actually, in the interest of time, I think we'll just open it up because I'm not imagining that we have a lineup of people on this. To just give testimony to anybody and we'll sort it out from there. And as a reminder, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand icon and wait to be recognized. And if you're on the telephone, it's *9. Will raise your hand and wait to be recognized. So we'll just open it now for any public testimony on these proposed changes. And when you are recognized and first get to speak, please give us your name and your address for the record.
Okay, I have one hand raised. I will allow them to speak. It's a phone number. It's 1-503. And then the next 4 digits I can't see on my screen. And then the last 3 end in 252. So I will turn on their mic now.
And there you go.
Hi,
Welcome.
so my name is, oh, thank you. Appreciate everyone's time. My name is Zoanna McKenzie, and I'm at 18428 Meadow Avenue, Sandy, Oregon, 97055. I'll do my full phone number just in case you need it. It's 503-250-0252. My main concern is the development is, I'm very excited about the different changes that rolled out from these plans compared to the prior plans.
Hold on, are you talking about Deer Meadows by any chance?
We're looking
Yeah.
at the Parks and Open Space Design Code Amendment.
apologize. Okay, never mind.
No, just stay on the meeting though. There'll be a time that I can promote you to talk during that hearing item.
Okay, that sounds good.
Not
No
a
problem.
problem.
Chair, I do not see any hands raised on this item.
Okay. Well, we don't need a recap since there's been no testimony. We can go right to a motion to close the public hearing before our discussion.
Move we close the public hearing.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Carlton, seconded by Commissioner Hook to close the public hearing at 6:58, which we will do. All in favor, say aye or thumbs up. Okay. All right, discussion. Any further questions for Kelly or things you didn't understand or?
I just had one quick question, Kelly, and just education. On the very first, I guess it's under A, on 178620A. The second sentence, it has to do with the primary, entrance facing, the parkland, et cetera. The next sentence starts off by saying residential through lots or corner lots, and I just didn't know what a residential through lot was.
Yeah, so a residential through lot, by the code definition, is a lot with two frontages. So it'd be a lot that, has a street on both the front and the rear of the lot. So
Oh,
it just goes
okay.
through and it's basically on two frontages.
Okay,
It's kind of like a corner lot in the sense that it has two street frontages, but it's not on a corner of two streets.
okay,
The streets are parallel.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And I guess just wanted to congratulate you. You appeared to get rid of that infamous diagram that was a little bit of a problem in Bailey Meadows.
I hated that diagram, so I'm glad to see it go.
Thank you for all your work on it and the time that you spent since our last meeting, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to thank Attorney Chris Green. He was instrumental in everything. He, just kept looking at the code whenever I asked him, and I really appreciated that. And then just ESA as well. They made themselves very available for us. And like I said, it is a lot of 1786 is just very technical. Just a very technical code section.
Mhm. It'll be nice to see it all in black and white and not black and red and white.
Well, given all the red, it seems like a lot of the black is going away.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's nothing else, I'm disappointed we don't have a question for you, Chris, but
Thank you.
no problem. Glad it worked out, at least this far.
there is a suggested motion in the staff report. If somebody is just dying to make one, but struggling with how to word it.
Chair, can I just ask a quick question real fast?
Sure.
I think this is maybe the first time I've seen this much change in a chapter that's come to me, and this is my own personal preference. So Kelly, feel free to tell me no. Is there any way in the future to get these in a Word document where we can just accept the changes and read it and negate all of those crossed out words so I can see the flow and simplicity of it? Or is that something that we're not capable of?
Yeah, what I have done in the past is when requested, and I can do this in the future, it's no big deal. I prefer not to put a Word document out there with it. But what I could do is just on the agenda, post the track change version and a clean version as well. If that
Okay,
works.
I'll just
both in
request.
the-
I'll just request it in the future. Then I didn't know I could do that. So
Oh, no, I mean, I guess my point is if the commission would like to see it with both track changes and clean in the future, we'll just do that going forward. I wasn't trying to say you would have to request it individually.
That would be
Okay.
really nice.
Yeah, either that or just post it with track changes mode, because that, individually you can do it. I mean, if you bring up Word, you just you just click a button. Assuming you know how to do that. So just trying to minimize the work on your end, Kelly.
It's honestly, for me, it's another 5 minutes to set up the agenda. It's not a big deal. And I've been asked by city council a few times to do that on different code edits. So I'd be more than happy to do it moving forward for planning commission.
Thank you.
Good idea. Okay, we're waiting for a motion.
I move the motion that's in the staff report.
You have to read it.
He's got to find it.
I move the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council on the proposed code modifications to chapter 17.32 and 17.86 of the Sandy Development Code. Period.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to forward our recommendation, chapter 1732 and 1786 to the city council. Let's do a roll call vote. We usually do them, so.
Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasowski. Stepped away. I'll go to Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes,
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes,
Commissioner Lasowski,
Yes.
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, I gotta find where I put my agenda. There we are. Okay, we will move on now to the next public hearing. And we will open it at 7:04. And this one is a quasi judicial. File number 21-041, the Royal Lane annexation. Any abstentions to declare from anybody? Okay, nothing seen. Any conflicts of interest from anybody? Okay, nothing. Any ex parte contact, including any site visits? Okay. Any challenges from the public to any commissioner or the commission in general? You see any raised hands, Kelly, or anything?
Oh, sorry. Failing on the job here. No, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay. All right. I'll go over that in just a moment. If you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Any party may request that the hearing be continued to a later date or that the record remain open after the hearing is closed. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Staff report.
Thank you, Chairman. As you'll notice, Mr. Kilby just popped up on the screen. He'll be presenting tonight as well. So I promoted him to a panelist. So that's why you saw him come up. That's how it'll kind of work in this format. Hopefully on the next item, you'll see like 5 or 6 people pop up because that's how many people they have presenting. So let me share my screen here. So again, I have a slideshow for this one, pretty brief. I'll try to be pretty brief again. So this property is about 15 acres. It's in an island. It's on this map here, the vicinity map, it's the red boundary. The other small area to the kind of the southwest corner of this 15-acre property would remain an island. Those, I think there's 3 properties there. They're not included in this annexation request. Everything around the red and yellow little box is already in city limits, so it's completely surrounded. So it's an island that's completely surrounded by city jurisdiction. And you'll notice up here on the right-hand corner, if you can see my cursor, that is the Sandy High School. This is Bell Street here. And as I'll explain, that's one of the main reasons for this annexation is for the continuation of Bell Street through here. Down here, this is where Grocery Outlet and Bi-Mart and the Dollar Tree are. And here's the Mount Hood Athletic Club. So just kind of orient you. And then eventually down here, you can see this road right away. This will be where the extension of Kate Schmitz eventually comes up and comes into Bell Street here. So the request is a type 4 annexation. It's a quasi judicial hearing tonight. There's 3 types of annexations. This particular annexation is type A, which they're proposing the conceptual zoning designation, which is general commercial C2 for the entire 15 acres. So there's conditions for annexation. It meets the first one, which is the site must be within the urban growth boundary. It meets the second one, that the site must be contiguous to city limits. It is on all sides of it, except the portion that is contiguous to the other area that's already in the island as well. It must be in compliance with different ORSs. And the property owner shall not violate any tree retention requirements. We did not find any evidence of that. So they seem to be in compliance with tree retention requirements as well. For an island annexation, you probably just heard a lot of this in August because Shelley gave a very similar presentation that I stole from. The TPR analysis is not required for island annexations. For an island annexation, this one meets a logical growth pattern as it continues Bell Street and eventually the continuation of Kate Schmitz. And the city in this case is the actual applicant. Hooper, Hoff, Peterson, and Legalese, who Mr. Kilby's with, is the actual applicant on behalf of the landowners. The city held a pre-app with itself essentially. So the Public Works Department and HHPR, the consultant, held a pre-app with the planning staff. From that, we had some additional recommendations beyond just the road development and FSH overlay review. One of those was to annex in this property so that once the road is developed, the entirety of the road is within city limits. It just makes it a lot easier for police patrol. And then it also just makes an easier process because there's only one jurisdiction dealing with the road construction instead of involving Clackamas County planning as well. So the Public Works Department for the city listened to that advice, and they had HHPR put together an island annexation request and had the proper property owner signatures from the 2 groups that actually own this 15 acres. So there was one missed item in the staff report that I kind of overlooked when putting it together. I did catch it before the meeting tonight. Actually, Emily did, so I'll thank Emily for that. We recently, a few years back, when we updated the island or the annexation code section, chapter 1778 in the development code, we now require either an approximate or surveyed location of the FSH overlay district. So the 2 options is to just give an approximate location upon annexation, and then a condition of annexation, if they do that, would be that they have to map the overlay prior to development to make sure that it is correct. The other way you can do it is do the FSH overlay surveying concurrently with the annexation request. In this case, the HHPR, I believe, will be putting together a survey for Bell Street. But if we go back a few slides here. Sorry, it's taking a second. Oops. The FSH area on this property is essentially the entire eastern boundary. And so the city and the property owner will kind of share in the burden of making sure it's mapped correctly and making sure that all the setbacks from top of bank are properly mapped. And that will be once Kate Schmidt comes up here. That's basically the alignment of it is right through the FSH area. So at some point, the city will have to be involved in this mapping anyways. What staff is recommending is adding an additional condition to this annexation that this FSH area is mapped to confirm its true location and setbacks to the creek or any wetlands prior to any road development, either in Kate Schmitz or with the extension of Bell Street. It could also be tied to the development of this lot. So we're just recommending an additional condition is tied to that FSH boundary mapping. Let me get back to where I was here. And with that, that's the only thing that I think we kind of missed in the staff report that I wanted to highlight. The staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the annexation to the City Council with the conditions outlined in the staff report and the additional FSH overlay condition. And on the FSH overlay condition, I don't think if you decide to go with staff's recommendation on that, I wouldn't worry too much about wording it exactly correct because staff will work on that before this goes to City Council. We would just want confirmation and direction on that from the Planning Commission. So that concludes my staff report.
All right. Thank you so much. Any immediate questions of staff before we move to applicant? Okay, we will turn it over to the applicant presentation. You probably know the routine of giving us your name and your address.
Yes, sir. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Brad Kilby. I'm the planning manager for Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis. I'm here in Portland, 205 Southeast Spokane Street, Portland, Oregon, 97202. And just for a quick reference, I was going to show you the preliminary alignment of, so we're working with the city and Public Works Department to extend Bell along the east property line of the property that's in question that we're talking about tonight. And then it'll swing up, there'll be a four-way roundabout there or intersection, and then it will come down and connect at Southeast 362nd with the Fred Meyer over here and the highway right here. So that is the primary reason for this request. And then I will share my screen again. And we'll go to a. So can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Not right now.
Okay. Let me try this again. I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare again. Now can you see it?
No, unfortunately.
Brad, if you want, you could send it over to me real quick, an email, and then I can just move forward on your slides.
I'll send that right to you right now.
Should just take a minute to download, and if that even.
On its way.
Okay, I got it. Just give me 1 second to download it here.
Okay.
And this won't cut into your presentation time.
Well, that's fine. I'm hoping to be done in less than 10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
think the staff report and our materials did a pretty good job of explaining what's going on.
I'm almost there.
We told the clock.
Yeah. I only had yet 2 minutes before that, so you're good. Okay, so yeah, just let me know when you want me to advance. Whoops,
Okay.
whoops, hold on, that didn't pull right. It pulled the one in your email. Hold on. What the heck? Okay, stop sharing. That was weird. Okay, here we go.
We got it.
Perfect. So I've already introduced myself with Harper Rock Peterson Regal. So the City of Sandy Public Works Department, in conjunction with the property owners, are proposing to annex 15.21 acres of land into the city. So that piece is 15.21 acres. And within Public Works, they've been referring to that property as property number 3. The property owner has signed the application and is in support of the application. And aside from 362nd Drive extension, which goes along the east edge of that property, no formal development is proposed with this application. Next slide, please. This just shows the project location and context of the greater city. And as Kelly had mentioned, the entire east, north, south, and a portion of the west property is already surrounded by existing city limits. Next slide, please. So the existing city limits are shown in blue. And right now that entire area, that rectangle, is an island. And if you approve the annexation or recommend approval to the council, may ultimately approve it, then it would bring this property in. Next slide, please. So the property is currently zoned rural residential, farm, and forest, 5 acres to Clackamas County zoning designation. But the city has also designated the property as general commercial, and it's shown as retail commercial in the city's comprehensive plan. Upon annexation, approval of the annexation, the property would assume the commercial zoning that the city has applied. And then, as Kelly mentioned, a perennial stream runs along the eastern border of the site with a flood and slope hazard overlay over a portion of that property. Next slide, please. So the approval criteria for a type A annexation are found in chapter 1712, 1718, as well as 1778, and within the ORSs. The ORSs generally spell out the procedures and processes, and then they're implemented through the city's development ordinance. So in this instance, as Kelly had mentioned, it's a type A because it already has some conceptual zoning applied to it. It's located within the city of Sandy's urban growth boundary and is contiguous to the existing city limits. The owner has indicated that there have been no illegal trees removed within the past 10 years and that are intended to be protected under these provisions. And then next slide, please. The annexation approval criteria found in section 1778-050 generally requires that water, sanitary sewer, storm drainage, streets, ped and bicycle facilities, fire protection and emergency services, and police services can serve the site that you're bringing in to annex. And so, as I mentioned, the entire, almost entirely around the property is existing city limits. And stormwater drainage in this case would be accommodated with future development. There is some existing water and sanitary sewer lines out there that can be extended, and I think are proposed to be extended to as part of our road improvements. And then there will be ped and bicycle facilities associated with the construction of 362nd extension. Fire protection and emergency services, it appears that this property is already served by the Sandy Fire District. And then the police don't, the county serves, county sheriff's office serves with police services now, but ultimately it would be come under the city of Sandy's police department's jurisdiction. And as Kelly mentioned, a TPR analysis is not required. Basically, just real quick, a TPR analysis is required generally when you're looking at rezones or comprehensive plan amendments that are not or have not been considered previously by the city. So the city, by going through their conceptual zoning and their TSP update, considered these properties within these islands to be developed under the zoning designations that you have on your zoning map and comprehensive plan. So those impacts associated with the development of those properties under that zoning designation would have been considered in that TSP amendment. And then finally, that the annexation is in the best interest of the city. We believe that it's an orderly and efficient extension of services. It's surrounded on by the city on at least 3 sides and a portion of the 4th side. And we think that it would be in the best interest of the city to bring this in, as it allows for a public facility to be constructed along the east property line and managed by the city. Next slide, please. This is what Kelly was speaking about. This is the flood hazard overlay. So I believe this is Tickle Creek, not 100% positive, but this is a perennial stream. And then these are identified as wetlands down here. As part of the 362nd Avenue Extension project, we're currently putting together a land use application for the design and development or consideration, land use considerations associated with extension of that street, which includes delineation and survey of the resources immediately around the site, but it did not pick up, and Kelly and I had this discussion earlier, we didn't pick up along the eastern edge of this property. And unfortunately, Mike is on vacation, so I didn't really have an opportunity to talk with him about this. But I guess our project manager had mentioned that he had spoke with Mike about the future extension of Kate Schmitz Avenue, and he thinks it'll be quite a ways out, wouldn't be, and they would most likely have to look at an alternative alignment, simply because when you go into impact wetlands that are under the jurisdictions of the Army Corps of Engineers and DSL, you have to show that you have considered all alternatives, and they will have heartache with you bringing a road up through a wetland if there's another alignment that could be had. Next slide, please. So the proposed additional condition, it really doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact my work. It is a cost to the city, and it's a cost to the 362nd Avenue Extension project. I just wanted to raise this in case Mike wanted to appeal it. But, if no development happens on that and Kate Schmitz Drive is not extended within the next 5 years, that delineation and any concurrence with that delineation through the Army Corps of Engineers and the Division of State Lands will have to be redone. They're only good for 5 years. And then it just may not be timely with this application, but again, I will defer to the city decision makers on this matter. Next slide. And with that, we respectfully request that you approve the annexation or make a recommendation to the city council to approve the recommendation. Accept the findings and conclusions of the staff report, the information within the record, and recommend approval to the city council. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions you might have. I also have the project managers on the phone. If there are questions related to the street extension, he might be able to answer those questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant right now? Okay, stick around as we move to public testimony. And again, as I said before, those that are here that want to speak to this application, we will go in 3 segments. I'll first call for those in favor, then I'll call for those who are not in favor of the proposal, and finally for those that are neutral, neither for it or against, that just have a comment or a question to ask. If you are here on Zoom, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. And if you're on the telephone, it's *9 that will effectively raise your hand. And this is the annexation public hearing. So we'll start with anybody in favor of the proposal. If you wish to speak now, raise your hand. And if you are recognized and speak, begin by giving us your name and your address.
Chair, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to those who may be opposed to the request, the application. And if you are, raise your hand.
Again, no hands raised.
Okay, and finally, if you are just neutral on it, you have a question or a comment, raise your hand now. If you're on Zoom, just click the raise hand. If you're on the phone, it's *9.
Again, no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. You probably don't have any recap or recommendation or further recommendation, Kelly?
I mean, the only recommendation I have is that we have some sort of condition tied to the FSH mapping. I think it's crucial with a wetland and a creek and everything. And I think the city needs to lead by example to make sure that that wetland and creek is surveyed correctly on our mapping. A lot of the mapping for the FSH was done pretty crudely at like a high level without actually going onto individual properties and doing survey boundaries. You know, I don't know if it should be tied all to the Bell Street project. I'm not saying that, but I do think we need to have a condition. And I do have some concern. I think Mr. Kilby brought up a really good point about finding an alternative path for Kate Schmitz. And we'll make note of that for this TSP, where, as you all know, we're doing a TSP revision right now. So the conceptual alignment needs to change. I am a little bit surprised, though, that the planning work that the city did on this in 2009 through 2011 didn't take that wetland in consideration. That was before I worked here, but the dedications that have already happened on Kate Schmitz are going to be hard to reverse at this point because they put that alignment right through that wetland. So I'm a little bit miffed at how that actually occurred. But I think Mr. Kilby's correct. We're going to have to look at an alternative path. But other than that, I think the applicant and the city planning division are 100% on board with one another. And maybe you can give us some direction on the FSH mapping, and then we can work with the applicant on making some conditions that make sense for timing wise before we go to the city council hearing.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Maybe it just takes one humongous bridge.
Oh. Yeah, I just glanced at it on the map, and yeah, what's interesting is what the routing would be. If you map the FSH, Kelly, you would map both the east and the west boundaries of it appearing. It looks like it goes north-south. So you'd map both the east and the west, which would include
Correct.
To the east of it is school district property. It's the high school.
I think it makes a lot of sense to do it right now. And the reason why I say that is that they're designing Bell Street right now. And I think it would be really wise to design the alignment for Kate Schmitz at the same time, so that we know where it's going to come in to Bell Street. So we know it can meet like our tangent requirements, our sight distance requirements for like safe intersection sight distance when somebody comes up to the stop sign eventually. So I do think it needs to be, the planning would be wise to do right now concurrently with the Bell Street project. And in saying that, I think it'd be wise to remap that and make sure we know where the wetland is at this point as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the map. That's pretty tricky because you have to go to the east, because to the west you got the athletic club, and then you run into high school pretty quick. So I mean, if you know where the east boundary of that fish overlay is.
I mean, I think the other really good timing piece, and I won't get into this too much because this is not my realm of expertise, but I believe the city will be negotiating with this property owner of the 15 acres for right-of-way acquisition. And I think it would make a lot of sense to be also talking to them at the same time about the Kate Schmitz alignment, because we'd probably need a portion from them for that as well. So, I'm not going to get into the details on that too heavily, but I do think it makes a lot of sense to condition mapping and looking at this right now, instead of designing Bell Street without considerations for Kate Schmitz and then finding out later on that it's going to be really hard to meet site distance and tangent and everything else.
Mhm.
So does that fish overlay survey need to be done prior to the annexation, or just
No,
a condition of?
I think that it could be done that way, but I wouldn't want to hold up the annexation for that. I think what it could be done is we could have a condition that the FSH overlay mapping or survey work is completed prior to any additional right-of-way dedication, acquisition, or road development, or something along those lines. And then if it's mapped and it's correct, then the applicant doesn't have to do anything else, and that's pretty much the end for the FSH mapping. If it's mapped and the mapping is currently incorrect, then just concurrently with the road project, they would just apply for a zone map amendment to amend the FSH overlay. I wouldn't want to hold up the road project because of it,
Mhm.
but it could be done concurrently, I think.
Okay. We do need to give the applicant any opportunity for rebuttal, and which we'll do if there's any further comments. But Brad, we will keep, since I think you're the only one in the room on this application, we will keep the public hearing open for during our discussion so that we can ask you a question if we need to without having to reopen. But did you have any comments in a rebuttal nature at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll move to our discussion. Commissioner Carlton has had some comments and pointed out it's a good discussion with Kelly.
Chair, I was just going to tell Commissioner Carlton, glad to have you back, because the only question I had was on FSH overlay, and you pegged it, so thank you.
I've never been shy. I think most of you know that.
Kelly, you probably would like a little bit further or more defined direction on that fish overlay condition, or
Yeah, yeah, that'd be nice. I don't know if our attorney has any advice on this as well. I haven't actually had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Duffman on this matter, so this is the first time I'll have heard from him on this matter.
well,
Hi. Hi, everybody.
hi,
Nice tie.
David.
Like
Hi.
your tie.
So, oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's nice and I guess it's maybe a little bit premature. It's it looks like kind of like a candy cane or something, but you know, we're getting there. I think the way that you've structured it, Kelly, is just fine. To me, it seems like what the goal here would be to make sure that really prior to having anything, probably the dedication, but certainly the construction, that the fish overlay is correctly identified. I think, if I'm not mistaken, ultimately one of the permitted uses within the fish would be infrastructure. So it's probably not fatal, but nevertheless, for the purposes of this annexation, I think the way it's structured and having that condition as a condition of approval, that's just fine. And also, as far as the motion would go, I would agree with Kelly. I think since you're really just making a recommendation to council, you know, it's more the spirit than the specifics. We'll get that, you know, all ironed out once council considers it and presumably approves it.
Okay. Any further discussion? I think if we, so that we don't have to do a motion that has a lot of detailed wording about the fish overlay, and leave it to staff, if we considered it one of the conditions in the staff report, that be sufficient to just forward a recommendation with the conditions to cover staff working out the fish overlay situation. Okay.
That would be just fine. Yep.
So there's no further discussion. We can take a motion, and there is a suggested motion in the staff report. And it will work as written.
And Chair Crosby, did the hearing close? I
Oh,
don't know that
nope.
it's a
Yeah, got to close.
little bit.
No, it did not.
I move we close the public hearing.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing at 7:37. All in favor with a thumbs up. Okay, we are closed. Thank you, David. Now we'll go to the motion.
Chairman, I recommend approval. We approve file 21-027 annexation to the city council with the conditions in the staff report and the additional fish overlay condition as suggested.
That will work. But it does need a second.
Oh, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to forward a recommendation to city council on this application with the conditions as outlined in the staff report. We'll take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel, Commissioner Lee,
Yes,
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes,
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
We want to take a couple minutes, like 3 minutes before this next item.
I was just gonna ask, we'll just take a brief interlude, and we'll probably even have a longer one later on.
So just mute, everybody mute yourself, please.
Okay, I think we're getting everybody back in. Commissioner Lee, are you at your camera or?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Okay. All right, well, we will move on to the next one, our final public hearing for the evening. And we will open this public hearing at 7:44. This is file 21-014, what we'll be calling the Deer Meadows subdivision. So I'll begin by calling for any abstention from any commissioner.
This is Stephen. I'm not abstending, but I did want to put on the record that I am a resident near Deer Park and did receive notices for the public hearing. But I am not biased, and nor do I have a conflict of interest in this case.
Thank you for letting us know. Any issues with that from any other commissioner? Okay,
I don't know if I have a commissioner, if I have a conflict, Commissioner Crosby. I was on the city council when this was approved in earlier form, or disapproved, I should say.
okay.
No issue there unless, Commissioner Lee, you feel that you'd have any reason to be biased towards this new application, some reason that you don't feel you could objectively review what's in front of you.
No, I don't have that problem, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I haven't asked for any conflict of interest, anybody else? Or any ex parte contact to declare? Okay, nothing seen. Any challenges to the planning commission by the public? I guess we haven't gone over the rules of how the public can get involved. If you are listening in, and we will go over these a couple of times during the public hearing, but if you do want to speak and you're on Zoom, just click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized by Kelly. If you're on the telephone, it is *9 that will effectively raise your hand.
I do not see any hands raised, Sherman.
Okay. All right, for the legalese. If you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. Your comment should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Any party may request that the hearing be continued to a later date or that the record remain open after the hearing is closed. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Just before I call for the staff report, just to let everybody know, kind of reminder, because you were told via email, we are running a clock tonight on the testimony and the presentation. The applicant will have 20 minutes for their presentation. Public testimony will limit each one to 3 minutes, and then the rebuttal from the applicant, I don't have that in front of me. I believe it was 15 or 10 minutes. We will know when we get there.
I think we said 10. That was, I think, what was communicated earlier.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. All right, staff report.
Yeah, before I jump into that, let me make sure I get all their people promoted here. I'm working on it.
Okay.
I think once I promote it, they have to accept it. And I've had to promote a few people a couple times. I don't think they saw the prompt. Okay, they had 6 people. Let me make sure I have them all here.
I see 6.
Okay, there we go. I got them all. Okay, so let me open up my slideshow here. So yes, this is file number 2114 sub tree. And so I'll just jump right into it here. It's located at the east terminus of Demarco Road. So here's Demarco Road right here. Here's the Deer Point subdivision, both phases 1 and 2. Whoops, what did I do there? Here's the vacant land that was dedicated with Deer Point for an eventual park. And with the park's master plan, they're looking at developing that in the next few years. I think we even put some dedicated funding aside for that. 26 runs along right here. Vista Loop Drive, the west end of Vista Loop Drive intersection is right here at the highway. And then this is the apartments across the street here from the site that you see when you drive down Highway 26. So that kind of orients you to where this is located. It's on the east end of town, kind of when you're leaving going towards Johnson RV. So the request is a type 2 subdivision. In accordance with section 171220, I elevated the application to a planning commission hearing because of expected public interest. As a few of you remember, I think 2 of you at least from 15, 16 years ago, this was originally, this same site was a subdivision that was proposed and ultimately approved. That subdivision approval then ran out. There was a reinstatement that occurred that kind of prolonged the life of that subdivision approval. It was called Vista Loop South. Ultimately, that also expired. And then just in the last year or so here, or 2 years, maybe it was the end of last year, we had another proposal for the same site from the same applicant called Bull Run Terrace. That application also included a zone change and a specific area plan and some other different things that this application does not include. So I'll just go through kind of some of the technical things here. This just has some key dates. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we sent a transmittal to different agencies. We sent a notification to all property owners within 300 feet in early August. At that time, I'll just explain that we had said that this meeting tonight would be in person. I then pulled the commission, especially with the rise in COVID-19 cases around the metro area, and then also the requirement for everybody in chambers to have to wear masks. We then sent a supplemental notice saying that this meeting would be moved back to only a Zoom format. So that's what the supplemental notice was. It was nothing more than that. And then a legal notice was published in mid-September in the Sandy Post. At publication of the staff report, we had 5 written comments. I believe we received 2 or 3 more today. I put them on the website on the agenda. I also forwarded them to the commission. So you should have received those in your inbox today. I think there was 2 more, but there might have been a 3rd one. The main concerns expressed with the first 5 and the theme continued with the next few as well. Most of the people expressed concern with Demarco Road not being proposed to intersect with the highway. I think people are concerned with all the traffic going west on Demarco and funneling through the existing neighborhood. There was a lot of concern about more housing, which leads, they were saying, typically to congestion and exacerbates parking issues. The property is zoned for housing though. So I just, I want to make sure the public understands that whether the current proposal is ultimately approved or denied, this property does have development rights. So there will be housing at this site at some point. One of the other main concerns was that Deer Point Park is not being proposed. If you remember, with both Vista Loop South and Bull Run Terrace, Demarco Road and Deer Point Park expansion were both being proposed. So in both of those proposals, which I'll go over in a few minutes, there was things that is not being proposed tonight. And then a few commenters talked about, or a few people that wrote in public testimony talked about multifamily housing should not be approved. Again, one of the zones is, I believe, R2. It allows multifamily housing so long as they meet the setbacks, density, and stuff like that. So part of the site does have multifamily, the ability to have multifamily, and then even the C3 land, some of that could be multifamily as well. So, you know, I sympathize with some of the people that wrote in public comments. There's nothing the city can do to stop multifamily from a portion of this site. It's just currently what it's zoned. We did receive agency comments as well. I just wanted to kind of list them out here. The majority of these agency comments, which were also commented by all county surveyors from a memo from Friday, September 24th, have issues with the proposal. ODOT, the city transportation engineer, the city transit director, and the city public works director all have issues with the Demarco Road not being proposed, consistent with the TSP, and they're, you know, for instance, the transit master plan has it showed as a future transit route. And then the Parks and Trails Advisory Board, their main concerns were around no additional parkland being proposed, which would be inconsistent with the 1997 plan, which called for a larger park in this neighborhood. It's also inconsistent with the language in 1786 that states that, you know, the city, the developer has to dedicate land at, you know, per the formula in 1786, and that the city can either accept that land or approve fee in lieu instead. And that has nothing to do, I want to make sure everybody understands, that has nothing to do with the code changes that were proposed by staff tonight and that planning commission forwarded a recommendation to city council. That is how the code is currently written and interpreted by staff and by our city attorney's office, that we can require land dedication. Obviously, if you read the memos from the applicant, they're pushing back against that and saying that, you know, our code cannot require them to dedicate land, but that is how the code reads currently. The proposal is a 32 lot subdivision, 30 lots for low density residential. So those 30 lots that they're proposing either single family homes or duplexes. With the House Bill 2001 adoption and the code changes that have happened in the last few months, I think the commission's very familiar with any lot that has a single family home or has the potential of a single family home also has the potential now for a duplex. So we don't know which it will be, but those 30 lots would either be single family homes or duplexes. There's one small lot of medium density residential, one large lot with a combination of medium density and village commercial. So that larger lot would most likely have some commercial aspects per the village commercial designation, but most likely it would also have multifamily housing. So apartments or condos. 30 lots of the R1 range in size from 5,500 square feet all the way up to 32,000. I also want to make it clear the only reason why the one lot's at 32,000 is because that's where they're proposing their tree retention. So the majority of their tree retention is on that one lot that's 32,000. And that's the reason why it's so large, is because that's where they're sticking all the retained trees for the entire site. And then I want to point out the exact number of multifamily housing units. We don't know that right now. We can calculate for the R2 land that it would be between 38 and 66 dwelling units of multifamily. And then the C3 land, that has the potential to have some multifamily as well. We just don't know how many units that could potentially be even. So here's the plat map. If you follow my cursor here, it's the same area as I showed on the vicinity map a few minutes ago. Deer Point subdivision is located over here. The parkland's located right up here. They're proposing Street A, Street B, a small extension of Demarco Road that would terminate here at the intersection of A and B. Fawn Street, which would terminate into a cul-de-sac, and then Street C down here. And if you recognize, I talk about this in the staff report, but it's only a 40-foot wide street section. It's what's called a public access lane in chapter 17-100. So it has a lot of the same characteristics of a local street, but it doesn't have all of the same attributes as a local street. So it's a little bit narrower. And we can go into that more if you're interested in finding out about that, but I'll just leave it at that for now. So one of the big problems with this proposal, and one of the big reasons why staff is recommending denial of this proposal, is no Demarco Road. So as I said, with Vista Loop South and even with Bull Run Terrace, Demarco Road was proposed to extend to Highway 26 and intersect with Highway 26. As you can see here, the TSP plan and one of the projects in our capital project list is M20, which is down here in this corner. So M20 is one of the projects in our existing, what did I do that for? In the existing CIP for the TSP. And that project has been slated in the TSP since at least 2011. And I believe back into the 90s, actually, if you look back further, even there was conceptual alignment plans that showed Demarco Road, going all the way from 362nd or, Champion Way and Demarco Road in that area, all the way out east to Highway 26. So it's been planned for over 20 years. If you look at the comp plan, that's one of the main reasons why I believe this area is a village and a node, is because this area was always intended to have Demarco Road and therefore have an area for village commercial and kind of have a little center down here in the southeast corner of the city limits. So that's one of the areas why it is a village, I believe, is because Demarco Road is planned through, which would provide a transit route and a pedestrian connectivity to the highway, and therefore eventually a little commercial center. And that's why you see some C3 land down there in the corner. And I can go into that in a lot more detail. The staff report lays out a lot of points around that, but I think the main point of that is Demarco Road's required by the TSP, but even more importantly by the development code. One of the main criteria for subdivision approval is complying with the city's adopted street plan. The adopted street plan, consistent with OAR, is the TSP, and the applicant is not proposing a subdivision consistent with that development code criteria for subdivision approval, and they're also not consistent with the OAR or the TSP. Another big thing why staff is recommending denial is no park expansion. The code's very clear that there's a formula that you put together and that spits out how much parkland they have to dedicate. The applicant has not dedicated any parkland. Also consistent with what has been planned in the city for the last 24 years now, this park up here in green is supposed to be larger than the acreage that it currently is. And consistent with the Parks Board recommendation, they want to see an expansion of this park. And I'll kind of just leave it at that for now. The applicant, another big reason why we're recommending denial, the applicant is not proposing any Highway 26 frontage improvements. This is inconsistent with every other development that has to install frontage improvements along all street frontages that abut the property. It's also inconsistent with, again, with our TSP and more importantly, our development code. The development code has a lot of requirements about frontage improvements along existing streets that, a property like this, which it touches those streets, it has to develop the frontage. The applicant is not proposing that. Again, another big reason for denial is they're proposing 2 cul-de-sacs without any pedestrian connectivity from the cul-de-sac to any other street or any other activity center. In the upper left-hand one, they're not even proposing any way for somebody to cross out of this subdivision into the park. There's no proposed easement even there, which I thought was kind of bizarre, but they're also not proposing any easement to the highway or anything else. So this is, again, inconsistent with the development code, inconsistent with the goals of the development code for pedestrian connectivity. There's a lot of citations throughout the code. One of the code criteria actually says any cul-de-sacs have to have pedestrian connections outside of them. So, and then another big one is lack of utility extensions. I'm not going to go into this in great detail. I wish the Public Works Director was here, since he was the one that made most of the comments about this in his submittal. But our code is pretty clear that public utilities have to be extended to the furthest extents of the development site. And in this case, we would need the utilities extended down here or somewhere to the eastern boundary. The applicant has failed to do so. So if you look on pages 5 through 8, I went pretty extensively into the subdivision approval criteria. Staff finds that the applicant and the application is failing to meet 6 of the 7 approval criteria. The only approval criteria that we believe it is meeting is the phasing criteria, because the applicant is not proposing phasing and therefore it meets the criterion. So a few of the big legal arguments. So if you wade through the pages, dozens and dozens of pages that have been submitted since the application, or since my staff report was published on September 17th, I believe the applicant's attorney has submitted, I believe, 3 different letters with a lot of supplemental materials. There's hundreds of pages to sift through. The applicant's engineer also submitted a very concise and appreciated 3-page report from all counties. So I really appreciated that. And then Mr. Ard submitted an updated TIS and also another memo that I have not had the chance to even open either document. I forwarded them to the Planning Commission and uploaded them to the website. Typically, those documents would need to be reviewed by our city transportation engineer, John Replinger anyways. So I haven't even opened those documents to look at them. But if you look through all that material, what you'll find is that the main arguments from the applicant's attorney is that basically large portions of our development code are not clear and objective. It's the same thing we heard through Bailey Meadows. I think we heard the same thing during the Views PD and Bull Run Terrace, all from the same applicant attorney here. And they also say that we failed to incorporate the transportation system plan by reference into the code, and therefore we cannot rely upon it to make requirements. So they also go into one of the letters that was recently submitted, go into rough proportionality analysis and nexus testing for both the parkland dedication and Demarco Road. So I'll let David go into more on that. But basically what they're saying is that we can't require the parkland dedication or Demarco Road dedication because it's not roughly proportional to the development that's being proposed, and that there's no nexus test or Nolan-Dolan analysis that the city has performed, which is true. We haven't performed a nexus test. Staff does not agree with the applicant on a majority of their clear and objective arguments. I haven't had full time to go through every single one. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that they make a good point on. But the amount and some of the clear and objective arguments they're making, I just don't find credible. It's like they're kind of throwing everything out there and seeing what sticks. I also believe the TSP is properly incorporated into the subdivision criteria. It's been the same criteria for, I believe, 30+ years in Sandy, and all of those subdivisions, which there's been dozens and dozens, the applicants have never been able to successfully get out of following the TSP. So I think the subdivision criteria does appropriately adopt the TSP. It references the comp plan and the city's official street plan, which is the TSP. As I said, the rough proportionality and nexus test would need to be completed by the city attorney's office and our city engineer, neither of which can be addressed tonight. So, I just want to keep a few things in mind. We have a few attorneys on the line tonight, one of which is our attorney. I think the applicant has maybe 3 attorneys on the line tonight. I would take things with a grain of salt at this point. The applicant's attorney is hired to try to limit construction costs and argue on behalf of the developer. So whether the applicant's right or not, or the applicant's attorney's right or not, that is the applicant's attorney's job, is to try to poke holes in our code, try to bring up things that may or may not be relevant. But like I said, they're kind of taking a big approach to just throwing everything out there and I think see what sticks. If you go back into the other applications, as I pointed out in the staff report, so this is no surprise to the applicant or anybody on this call, I don't believe, but the applicant admitted in their previous submittal for Bull Run Terrace that they needed to follow the TSP and that they were meeting the subdivision criteria by proposing Demarco Road consistent with the TSP. And so it seems like to me they're just forgetting that they said that 10 months ago or whatever it is. It's very convenient that now they've changed their opinion on that, and now they don't have to do any of that and they can still meet our development code. And the only other thing I want to point out kind of before I go into the final thing is here also that the applicant did request a full records request of all staff emails. So, you know, that's their ability to do that. So that's fine. But it kind of seems like they're in search of like a smoking gun to me. So when I see something like that, where they think they have a really strong case, it's a little perplexing to me why then they would also do a records request to try to find out and dig more. You know, if the applicant truly believes their case is as strong as the applicant attorney's letters would lead you to believe, I really question why a records request would even be necessary whatsoever, but I'll kind of leave that at that. With that, staff's recommending that Planning Commission deny the subdivision request before you tonight, based on the reasons as listed on page 28 of the staff report. And that kind of laid out 11 big reasons. A few of those reasons, they're sub reasons. So like the first one, for instance, it's 6 approval criteria we don't believe they're meeting. And so really it's more than 11 reasons, but those 11 main points are why we would recommend denial. And with that, I will turn off my slideshow here. And if you have any questions of me, I can field them now, or we can just wait until after the applicant presents. And after, you know, after rebuttal and everything else. It doesn't matter to me how you want to do it.
No, I don't. I'm fine.
I'm happy to wait until after we've heard from them.
I prefer to wait. I think it makes more sense than this one.
Okay. That's kind of I assume that's a gist. Nobody has a question right now. All right. Well, we will move to the applicant presentation. And Kelly, are you the clock watcher on this? All right. Turn it over to the applicant, and remember, I probably don't need to remind you guys your name and address for the record.
Hi, Chair Crosby, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Michael Robinson, and my mailing address is 1211 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1900, Portland, Oregon 97204. I'm before the Planning Commission tonight on behalf of the applicant. I understand that we have 20 minutes for our initial presentation, and our entire team is here, Chair Crosby and members of the commission, to answer questions. So if any time before you close the public hearing, you have questions, ask us, because we're here to answer those questions as well as questions from members of the public. Kelly, could you, or Chair Crosby, I wanted to ask Kelly a question. Could you let us know when we get to 17 minutes, please?
Sure thing.
Thank you. So Chair Crosby, here's how we're going to do our 20 minutes tonight. I'm going to just give a few more comments, and I'm going to turn over to Tracy Brown, who is the applicant's land use planner. Tracy's going to go through the application for you, talk about why we meet the approval criteria that are relevant to this application. Following Tracy, we're going to have Mike Ard talk. Mike is our transportation engineer, and he's going to talk about the transportation issues here. And then I'm going to come back and close the applicant's presentation. So I was just looking at my notes. I've got 3 things, but I want to just answer one of Kelly's questions. The reason there's a difference in how we've responded, how this application, which is, as Kelly acknowledged, a different application from the one previously submitted, how we've responded in terms of the approval criteria and the TSP, is that in the prior application, that was both a subdivision, a concurrent comprehensive plan map amendment, and a zoning map amendment, and different standards applied. This is only a subdivision application, and unlike the other application, the needed housing standards apply, as well as making this a limited land use application, which has incorporation requirements. So Kelly's right, we submitted a lot of information, but we did that because we thought it was fair to the Planning Commission for you to see all of our arguments, and we hope that you'll have a chance to read it. And that goes to the first thing I wanted to say, Chair Crosby, because this is the initial evidentiary hearing, we're going to ask that you close tonight's public hearing, but leave the written record open. And I've talked, of course, it's your choice which you decide to do, but David and I have talked about that. And I'll just lay out what we would ask you to do now. And then if you want to talk about it later or ask us questions, you're welcome to, of course. So we would ask that you keep the record open for an initial 14-day period, 2 weeks, until October 11th at 5 p.m. for anyone to submit argument evidence. For a second 1 week period, 7 days, for anyone to rebut what comes in during the first open record period. And then for a final 7 days for the applicant only to provide final written argument without new evidence. So that's a total of 28 days. I'd originally thought about asking just for 3 7-day periods, but David and I talked this afternoon. He asked if we would ask for 14 days for the first period, and that's fine with us. So we're asking that you close the public hearing tonight, you keep the written record open for 28 days. And if you decide to do that, Chair Crosby, we will extend the clock, the 120-day period, by an equivalent amount of time. And then I understand that you need to pick a date to deliberate on the application, and we can talk about if you want to do that tonight, and that's up to you and your staff. You can pick that date, and then we can talk about whether an additional extension of the clock is necessary. Secondly, what you're going to hear from Tracy and Mike in just a minute is why the application meets the approval criteria. And there's a lot of approval criteria that, while they're cited in the staff report, we don't think they can be addressed under state law. And that's not us trying to belittle the city or make it more difficult for you to do your job. It's us trying to do our job to represent what the law is in the best way we can. And that's frankly my job. I'm an officer of the court, and I do like to get paid. It doesn't always happen. But my job, more importantly, is to try and be fair about what the law is and to be honest with you about what I think the law is. And I hope that we were able to do that in this presentation. And let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you before Tracy and Mike start. I don't think there is. They're going to go through their presentations, Chair Crosby, and then I'll come on and finish up with a short presentation. So Tracy, do you want to start off?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tracy Brown. My address is 17075 Fur Drive in Sandy. And I'm going to try to take about 5 minutes for my presentation, so we have plenty of time for the others. So what I'm going to do tonight is just go through a little bit of the history of the application or the property, and Kelly touched on this in his presentation. I'm going to review the current application before you tonight. Also review responses to the staff recommendations, and I'll have a conclusion at the end. So what I'd like to do, if I can, share my screen, and I've prepared a little PowerPoint as well. So I'll just click on this.
We have it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So again, this is a presentation about the Deer Point subdivision. So just to touch on a little bit of the history, and actually I was involved in all of these applications on the property as originally the director of planning, and then as a consultant for the last two, this one and the Bull Run Terrace. So again, in 2006, there was the Vista Loop application, or Vista Loop South subdivision that was approved, and that included 81 lots, and it also changed the zoning. And so the zoning that you see today is a result of the zone change that was accomplished with the Vista Loop South subdivision. As Kelly mentioned, this approval expired in 2008, and it was reinstated by the council in 2013. And due to public improvement costs, primarily construction of highway frontage improvements and Demarco Road, that preliminary plat expired for a second time in 2015. So the current owner, Roll Tide Properties, purchased the property in 2018 and submitted the Bull Run Terrace application at the end of 2019. And that included 7 lots, and it also requested a zone change. There was a specific area plan. And some of you, I think, reviewed that. That application was reviewed in 2020, and both staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval. And then the City Council initially approved it, and at their second hearing, they changed their vote and the application was denied. So this application is, as Mike mentioned, it's a needed housing application, and it contains 32 lots in compliance with that existing zoning. 30 lots would be zoned R1, and the density range is 28 to 45 lots, so it's within that range. 2 lots would be zoned R2, and lot 32 would be contain both R2 and C3 zoning. A portion of lot 32 zoned R2 will contain multifamily dwellings as allowed, and uses on the C3 portion haven't been determined, but any development on that lot will require a separate design review application. So I just wanted to go through each of the items in the staff report in the beginning on page, or primarily I think all on page 28. So the first one had to do with the proposal does not meet subdivision criteria. So as explained on pages 6 to 9 of the applicant's attorney letter, the majority of these criteria are not clear and objective and cannot be applied. And to address criteria E4, which was one of the other ones that was listed, the applicant's traffic consultant has provided additional traffic study to address the ADT requirements on local streets. Number 2, no evidence that the proposal complies with cul-de-sac 50% requirement. We did submit an exhibit prepared by all county surveyors, which demonstrates how the proposal complies with this standard. And so this standard is satisfied. Number 3, the plan does not contain pedestrian connections. As explained on page 10 of the applicant's letter, this section also is not clear and objective and cannot be applied. The next one has to do with the distance between Demarco Road and Street C. It's less than 150 feet as cited in those 2 code sections. Fortunately, the requirements of this section are not applicable to the proposed developments, since Street C is a public access lane and it's not a local street. And that section specifically talks about local streets. The next one has to do with the minimum tangent of 100 feet between Demarco and Street B. Although the requirements of this section are not clear and objective, if the standard is found to apply, we can modify the plan to comply. So that could have been a condition rather than a reason to deny the application. Demarco Road not extended to
Can you
Highway
advance
20.
your slide?
Oh, sorry.
Tracy?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Demarco Road not extended to Highway 26. Also, as explained in the letter, the city cannot require the extension because the requirement has not been incorporated into the city's land use regulations. Frontage improvements, that's similar to that. The city cannot require these improvements. The extension of a water line, explained in the letter, although this requirement could be resolved with a condition of approval, the applicant reserves the right to challenge the constitutionality of this condition. There was also a reason or recommendation that the plan didn't show a 12-inch water line extended along Highway 26. And this, we don't believe this is a clear, there's no specific code citation that requires this in the staff report, and whether to determine whether that standard is clear and objective. And if it's found to be applicable, this requirement could be a condition, but cannot be a basis for denying the application. 10-foot storm easements shown on lots 9 to 13 and 27 and 28 should be 15 feet. We're fine with that requirement. We can make that work. So it could be a condition of approval. It shouldn't be a recommendation for denial. And finally, number 11, the Parks Master Plan and no park dedication. This has gone through in detail in the attorney's letter, and the city cannot legally require parkland dedication with this application because those standards aren't clear and objective. So again, just to kind of conclude my presentation, the submitted application is a needed housing application, and the attorneys will talk to you about what that means in detail. The proposal complies with all clear and objective standards. As explained in the attorney's letter, city code does not require dedication of parkland or Demarco Road to be extended. And some of staff recommendations should have been conditions of approval and not grounds for denying the application. And we respectfully request that you approve this application. And I'd like to, at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen and turn this over to Mike Ard to talk about the transportation plan that he's been working on for the application.
You guys are at 13 minutes.
Sorry, Kelly, how much time was that?
13.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm Mike Ard. I'm the applicant's traffic with Ard Engineering. I prepared the traffic study that was done for this development, which was dated June 14th, 2021. We did submit an updated version of the traffic study into the record today. I want to acknowledge that that report was submitted at the last minute. That was necessary, though, as the review comments that we got from John Replinger indicated that the count data that we used in the prior study was too old and we had to collect new count data. ODOT does have some requirements that we not collect count data within 2 weeks of a holiday, which meant we had to wait until 2 weeks after Labor Day to collect that data, which put me into a bit of a bind, and it was difficult to get the study done in time for the hearing tonight. But I did want to give you a brief overview of the updated study. We did use the 2021 count data, the new count data, to redo the analysis. The conclusions of the transportation analysis were essentially the same as the prior report. We did still find that some mitigation was necessary at the intersection of Highway 211 and Demarco Road, both for safety and for operations. And the same improvement is recommended, which is conversion of the intersection to always stop control. We did add also to this analysis something that specifically responds to the city's requirement to ensure that local streets do not experience traffic volumes, average daily traffic volumes in excess of 1,000 ADT. And in that analysis, we examined the local abut and connect to the proposed development or would provide potential through connections to Langenson Road. Each is operating with volumes less than 1,000 ADT now and is projected to continue to operate with volumes less than 1,000 ADT in the future with completion of the development. So it will comply with the local street code requirements. I did want to mention that I have a comment response for ODOT and John Replinger's comments that have been put into the record. Primarily their comments came down to the Demarco Road extension being missing from the plan. I think we've covered that element was not properly incorporated into the TSP. And the traffic study that I prepared properly considered traffic conditions absent that Demarco extension and found that operation will be acceptable with the addition of site trips from the proposed subdivision on the planned street network. The comments also included concerns that no traffic volumes were shown from future development within the C3 zone and concerns about access to the C3 zone. The applicant is not proposing any development within the C3 zone at this time. There's no requirement to analyze traffic impacts associated with future development that's not even been proposed. And any analysis that we did would be purely speculative since the type and scale of future development is not known. The east side of Street B in the proposed development does abut Lot 32 and will provide access to that lot, both for the residential and C3 portions of the site. Circulation within Lot 32 will be assessed as part of the design review process. Again, no development is proposed at this time within the C3 area, and there's no clear and objective code standard that would require assessment of future development, traffic impacts, access, or circulation within that C3 zone, absent any proposed development there. There are more detailed responses to the comments provided by Replinger and ODOT in the memorandum that I submitted earlier today, and I'd also be happy to answer questions. And with that, I will turn the remaining our attorney, Mr. Robinson.
You're at 17.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Mike and Tracy. Chair Crosby and Mike Robinson again on behalf of the applicant. So let me do two things. Let me summarize our legal position and try and make it as clear as I can. And then I want to make just a couple of comments and then we'll end our testimony. So this application is both a limited land use application and a needed housing application. Because it's a limited land use application to subdivision, only those standards from plans such as the transit plan or the parks plan or the TSP that have been properly incorporated into the Sandy Development Code Title 17 can be applied to this application. And let me read you just one sentence from a case called Oster v. City of Silverton. This is a case decided by LUBA where the city applied a TSP. LUBA agreed with the applicant that it wasn't properly incorporated, and they reversed the city's decision on that basis. And here's the standard. It says, quote, those TSP provisions do not, those land use regulations do not make clear what specific policies, action items, or performance standards contained in the TSP apply as approval criteria for a limited land use decision, end quote. That's the nub of the law, and that's the issue with the city's development code. Now, I'm confident that Kelly's right. In all the subdivisions you've approved, this issue probably has never been raised or challenged. But the problem is the code doesn't do what state law requires. And it's not me telling you that. That's what the case law says. That's what LUBA says. Because it's a needed housing application, the only standards that can be applied are clear and objective standards. And the reliance by the city on 17-160, let me find the right code section. Sorry, I have too many sticky notes going on here. In any event, if you look at the staff report, the reliance on the staff report section requires you to rely on the TSP and the requirement to extend Demarco on language that includes, quote, connected and consistent, end quote. That is not clear and objective. LUBA has actually addressed those terms. And so that's a problem. And that's very simply why the applicant didn't apply or didn't propose for Demarco Road to be extended. But there's another reason. Your code provides a 17-100-100G2 an exception to street connections, and it says street connection standards don't apply to roads with full access control like US Highway 26. And if you remember the prior application, the Bull Run application, ODOT said that a grant of access was necessary to make a connection to US 26 because it is an access controlled highway. And so there simply isn't, not only is there not an appropriate incorporation basis for the TSP to require Demarco Road to be extended, you actually have a code provision which says that standard doesn't apply in this case. So I recognize that
you're at 20 minutes, so if you can wrap up, please.
Thank you, Chair Crosby. I recognize these are important issues to you. That's why we raised them in the detail that we have. We hope that when you conclude the hearing and the record that you'll agree with us that the application in fact can be approved. We thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Everybody still okay to move on to public testimony? Okay. We will do that, move into public testimony, just some opening comments because I anticipate there to be some response. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, we know it's easy to do, but it's sufficient to just state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker. Even if that's all you say when you come to the mic, that you agree with what another person has said. We heard it and you don't need to repeat it. If you have any documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the body, by the Planning Commission, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. And to do that, either before or after you speak, but today, email your materials to, and if you don't catch this, you can ask for it later, planning@ci.sandy.or.us. And then staff will make sure that your evidence is properly processed. We'll be calling for testimony in 3 groups. First, those who are in favor, then those who are opposed, and finally to those with neutral testimony. If you are participating via Zoom, to get recognized, click the raised hand button and wait to be recognized. And if you are on the telephone only, you do *9, and that will effectively raise your hand and then wait to be recognized. Once you are recognized by Kelly to speak, the first thing that we do want to hear is your name and your address for the record. And as a reminder, you will have 3 minutes per person. Don't feel that you have to fill all 3 minutes. A lot can be said in that short period of time. So we do want to keep things moving as quickly as possible, but we also want to hear everyone. So with that, I'll call for any testimony in favor of the proposal. If you are in favor of the proposal and have some comments that you want to state, either hit the raise hand button or *9 on your phone, and Kelly will recognize.
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. Then we'll move on to anyone want to give testimony who is not in favor of this proposal. Again, reminder to state your name and your mailing address as you begin.
Okay, we have an Ashley. I'm going to allow that person to talk at this time.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ashley Yukich, and my address is 18331 Antler Avenue, Sandy, Oregon 97055. And I would just like to echo a lot of what has been said here tonight. I agree with not being in favor of this development for a lot of the same reasons that have already been mentioned. And I think that there's just a lack of vested interest in the community and ultimately the city as a whole from what's been presented here. And yeah, it seems that there's not really, from their presentation, there's not a concern for public interest or concerns that have already been presented. And yeah, it just feels like an underlying motive to kind of meet the bare minimum amount of effort. And it's my opinion that they're just really concerned with what is going to be put into place and not what is going to affect the current residents or the future livelihood of the community, including what's going to be put in as the development. So thank you all for your time and effort in allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much.
I know we had at least one other person. It was the lady that started speaking during that other item.
That's correct. Yeah.
And she is still on here. Oh, there she is. Okay. I'm going to allow her to talk. There we go.
Unmute and.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I actually missed my vote. I wanted to vote in favor. So my name is Zoanna McKenzie, and my address is 18428 Meadow Avenue, Sandy, Oregon 97055. So it was really good hearing everyone's perspectives for the development. And after hearing both sides, I would like to vote in favor.
Okay, any further comment?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So we are in the portion for those who are not in favor of the proposal. And again, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand button. If you're on the telephone, *9, and Kelly will recognize you.
I do not see any other hands raised at this point.
Just a question I have Kelly, which is unrelated but related. It's possible for, like, if 10 people were in one of those categories, for them to register simultaneously, and you'd see them all and you just let them in one at a time. And they don't have to wait for one to be done before they
Correct.
raise their hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody, actually, all panelists and attendees could all raise their hand at once, and then I'd have
Okay.
26 hands raised.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, there's like no queuing or anything like that. That's part of the system.
Okay. Well, that was my timer. Sorry about that.
Rockford Files.
Yes. It dates us, doesn't it?
My dad watched it.
Okay, so you see no others?
No.
Okay, so we'll move to a neutral testimony. If you are neither in favor or opposed, but have a question or comment, now is the time to raise your hand.
Well, Ashley raised her hand again, but I don't know if there's a second person that is, do you want me to promote the person to allow to talk? They only used about a minute last time. I was timing them, so.
No, let's go ahead.
Okay, there might be a second person in that household or something. I don't know.
Sure.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again. It's the same person, Ashley here. I just wanted to ask a question as far as, has there been any consideration with putting a traffic light kind of along Highway 26 there? And I know it might not be in regards specifically to this development, but there's also an apartment complex across 26. So I was just curious if there's been any consideration at looking at that. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And questions during testimony, if we can, staff will address them. Anyone else neutral testimony tonight?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, then we can move right to your recap. And
yeah, I don't know. It's a hard thing to recap because what you heard from the applicant was basically the same thing again and again and again, which is that the code's not clear and objective, and the different our different plans that we've put together over the last 27 years, none of those have been properly incorporated into the code as well. So I think this, this message, whether it's right or wrong, that's the message that the applicant's coming with. It's really hard to address it though, as the development services director, because I haven't had a time to go through each one of their points in their numerous letters that they sent over the last week with our city attorney at all. And even if I did, I don't know if it's really my obligation as the planning director, and I'll just be very honest, to determine whether a certain line within the code is clear and objective or not. Because I think if a certain line, one person could say it's not clear and objective, I think another person could say it is clear and objective. There's discretion in it. And I think ultimately it's up to a decision body like yourself, or even maybe a higher decision body like city council, or even maybe higher than them, to make those determinations. If it was one or two things that they were pointing out in their letters, then maybe I would be more willing to take a look at those and give you my interpretation on whether they're clear and objective or not, or whether they're properly incorporated. But they're bringing up dozens of sections that they believe are not clear and objective. They're bringing up, I think, at least 5 or 6 different master plans that they're saying are not clearly incorporated. I'm not an attorney. I don't have the professional expertise to kind of wade through all that. I don't know the case law like Mr. Doofman or the applicant's attorneys do as well. So I feel like it's a little bit out of place for me to be giving recommendations to the planning commission on a lot of this, because I think it is really legal recommendations. What I can do, and I think what my role is to look at the code and tell you whether their proposal meets it or not. And what I can tell you is that their proposal does not meet the development code. And their proposal doesn't meet the development code in numerous instances, as I laid out in the staff report. What I can also tell you is one of my other main goals as the planning director is to determine if, and this is one of, this is kind of laid out in the different subdivision and different approval criterion for the different land use applications, not just subdivisions that we do in Sandy. And that's to kind of find a balance and try to determine if what the proposal is in the best interest in the city, if it's meeting all the code objectives. And I feel like this application before you tonight is not even making really much of a serious attempt to be in the best interest of the city of Sandy. I thought it was interesting that the one public commenter that was against the proposal actually brought that up, because that was something I was going to hit upon in my rebuttal, is that, or my recap is that, independent of Mr. Robinson's arguments or any of the other arguments from the applicant, as the development service director, planning director, whatever you want to call my position, I don't feel the development is in the best interest for the surrounding neighborhoods. It doesn't follow the Parks Master Plan. It doesn't follow the TSP. And I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to the city in my position to recommend approval of this subdivision when it is clearly and objectively not meeting the code. So whether legally I'm right or wrong, I don't know, but I cannot recommend approval of this subdivision. The only other thing, the traffic light question, what I do want to say on that is, I think it is a consideration in the TSP. I think we looked at that when Bull Run Terrace was before us. I would have to go back through my notes, which I don't have before me tonight. But in answering Ashley's question, I believe our traffic consultant looked at that, and that at a future date, when there's more trips at Demarco Road and Vista Loop at that intersection, a traffic light would be warranted. But I remember from the Bull Run Terrace application that our traffic consultant didn't believe one was even warranted with that application when they were showing Demarco Road to intersect with the highway. And that application had more trips being generated than the one before you tonight. So I can say with almost certainty that even if the applicant tonight was proposing Demarco Road to connect to the highway, a traffic light would not be warranted at this time and place. Now in the future, it very well could be, but right now it wouldn't be. And then the other point that I just wanted to kind of make, I think it's very interesting when the applicant's traffic engineer starts citing ODOT collection response requirements, but that our code doesn't have any obligation for the applicant to meet, or very few. And so I think it's very interesting that, ODOT recommended something and John Replinger recommended something for new collection data for the TIS, and the applicant and the applicant's team jumped right on that. But anything that the city brings up as being a requirement of a land division is kind of just pushed aside. So you can take that as it is. That'd be a question for Mr. Doofman, or maybe for our traffic engineer, if those requirements somehow are applied differently. But I just found it very funny that, ODOT or John Replinger makes a comment and the applicant takes that very seriously. I don't even think that is actually in our code. And then things that are in our code are just basically thrown out because the applicant doesn't feel they're clear and objective or sufficiently incorporated. So take it as you will, but I cannot recommend approval of this application. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just ask Mr. Doofman, David. We'll be calling on you quite a bit in a few minutes, but I'm just give you opportunity if you have anything in particular in the recap or recommendation category where we're at right now before we move on.
I guess broadly speaking, this is not the first time the commission has heard these arguments. We went through a lot of this most recently with the Bailey Meadows subdivision. It is, I'd be lying to you if I said that issues regarding clear and objective standards, regarding limited land use decisions regarding housing applications generally have not, across the state, have not A, become quite contentious, and B, become heavily weighted towards approvals and applicants' ability to gain approvals. Some of that is a result of legislative changes that have happened and continue to happen, and just policy priorities in Salem. Some of it is I think, a way that the Land Use Board of Appeals is evaluating these cases now, in the standard that they are using when it comes to looking at both the incorporation question with respect to whether it's the transportation system plan or other things that might be in the comp plan, or also the clear and objective standards, and whether provisions in a development code are or are not clear and objective. In days past, if you will, to the extent that Lubo looked at a code provision and said, we don't think that's clear and objective, that would have been the basis for remanding the decision. Increasingly, if not exclusively, over the past, let's say, 3 years or so, the board has said, if we don't think it's clear and objective, we're going to reverse the decision if it's presuming it's a denial, right? That's how most of these come up, that the decision maker says, well, we don't think it complies with this standard, we're denying it. It gets to LUBA, and they will look at it. And if they determine that the basis for the denial is premised on a standard that's not clear and objective, they reverse the decision. And not only that, but attorney's fees are awarded based on the way the statute is written. So what am I getting at here? I'm getting at that it's, I can understand Kelly's take on this. He's looking at a code. It says what it says. I think it's probably a mix of both. And I think this is true pretty much with almost every code, if not every code in the state. It's an issue that every community is sort of confronting and figuring out how to deal with. I'd want to look more closely at the particulars. I know some of them that the applicant has raised. We've talked about a few of them, but as Kelly said, there's been a decent amount that's come in quite recently. And so, I would think that there are certainly, I would guess, some provisions in your code, like I said, in virtually every code, that are subjective criteria that probably would not pass that test. There are others that I think are clear. At least that would be my take on them. So I think we're going to have an open record period here that'll allow me to talk with Kelly and get back. I can, like we did in applications prior, put something into the record in terms of a memo, or that would go into a little bit more detail on these things. But suffice it to say, that's the standard is one that says we can't impose criteria that are subjective and that lead to a value-laden analysis that is trying to balance impacts and mitigate those impacts on the community. And so I think it's a little subtler than just whether there's any discretion involved at all. So it's a matter of really drilling down on that, and I think we can do that during the period of next couple of weeks here.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is like some of these arguments from the applicant, like I said, whether they're right or wrong, it's I could spend every waking minute making modifications to the development code. And at the end of the day, I'm sure there would be attorneys out there that would argue it's not clear and objective. So I don't think there's any real start or stop to where specificity and clear and objective can really start and stop. I really don't. And like David said, I know a lot of planning directors around the state of Oregon are struggling with this. If you remember in June, during a work session with the council, there was 1 or 2 counselors that said, you know, staff should just work on clear and objective and make sure it's all buttoned up in the code. Sure. we definitely could work on that. But I guarantee you at the end of the day, the code is still not going to be what some attorneys would say, or some courts would say, or like every thing in the code is clear and objective. So I just want to let you know that I think it's a very tall order what's being asked of the commission here tonight, is to look through your entire code and on all these instances define if it's clear and objective. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Well, we will move on to applicant rebuttal, and it was 10 minutes is what we agreed on.
Thanks, Chair Crosby, members of the Planning Commission, Mike Robinson again on behalf of the applicant. So let me start by saying this. I'm disappointed that we weren't able to find a way through this with staff. I appreciate what Kelly has had to say. I also appreciate what David told you tonight. And normally, and Bailey Meadows has been brought up by others, not me, but by others, so I'll mention this. Normally, I think my preference, and certainly my client's preferences, are to find a way to work with staff to come up with a decision that we can all live with. Best interest of the city is a laudable goal. It's not an approval criterion, but we share that. We want to be part of the community with the subdivision. We don't have any desire to do something that the community doesn't appreciate. But here, for whatever reason, we just weren't able to do that. And I'm sorry about that. I'm truly sorry, because I think we'd have a better proposal going forward had we been able to do that. Because what we end up with, Chair Crosby, is what you see tonight. Staff takes one position and we take another. And that's I think, frankly, a crummy way to do planning, but it's what we're left with. And I did sit in Kelly's chair. I was in his position many years ago, not at Sandy, but in other places. I've been a planner and I understand how you have to struggle, but you can't ignore what state law says. And whether the message is well received or not, it is what the message is. And I think David had an important point tonight. Regardless of what cities think, it is what the legislature has said, and LUBA in their most recent cases, and maybe in addition to our thousands of pages, as Kelly pointed out, maybe we can give you a couple of pages that describe some of the more recent LUBA opinions. But I think David's right. For the most part, when LUBA agrees with a needed housing applicant, they're not remanding, they're reversing. And again, nobody has any desire, at least of all us, to go to LUBA. We'd rather find a way through this so that we're happy and the city's happy. And I'm sorry, frankly, and honestly, in this case, that we haven't been able to do that. So a couple of things. We have made an open record request. It's your choice whether you continue the public hearing or leave the written record open. We hope you'll leave the written record open, close the public hearing, and leave the written record open. That means you can't deliberate tonight, but we hope that you'll leave the public hearing open long enough to ask the applicant and its team members who are here tonight any questions that you may have. We'd like to answer the questions if you have them for us. Kelly noted in his staff recap the issue of responding to the traffic study. So there's a difference between the issues we've raised regarding what the law requires for clear and objective standards or incorporated standards and evidentiary standards. The reason Mike Ard responded to ODOT and John Replica's comments is because those are evidentiary standards. So it's not meant to be offensive to staff, but those are evidentiary standards and we needed to respond to those. I agree with what David and Kelly had to say with respect to the difficulty in making a code clear and objective. But I will say that the limited land use statute has been around since 1991. That's 30 years. The needed housing statutes have been around even longer, 40 years, and they're incorporated in statewide planning goal 10 housing, which every city has to address in order to become acknowledged as consistent with the statewide planning goals. So it's a stretch to say that it's not possible to deal with these statutes. Many cities have, some better than others, but you can deal with it. It's a requirement of state law, and it's not me making this stuff up. It's what's the legislature has said, and it's what LUBA is repeatedly saying in their cases. There is a 3-page letter I put into the record early on. It's dated March 31 of this year. It's a very simple letter that lays out the limited land use argument and needed housing, and incorporation arguments. You don't need to read a long letter. You can go to that 3-page letter. That was the applicant's initial position. And it's easy enough to read and discern what our argument is. And I'd encourage you to do that while the written record is open. Let me go back to the Parks Master Plan. The problem, and I'm responding to the staff recap on this, Chair Crosby, and I'll make this quick. The problem with the city's position on the Parks Master Plan is twofold. One is you can't rely on the current or on the former Parks Master Plan, the one that's been since been supplanted by the new Parks Master Plan, because it's just not properly incorporated into the code. And seek whatever advice you want from the city attorney's office, but the fact remains it's not properly incorporated. The needed housing, the clear and objective argument is this: it's not that you don't have a formula for land dedication, you do. The problem with 17.86 is that you have a choice between fee in lieu and dedication, and there's no clear and objective standard that's a bridge between making one choice versus the other. That's the problem under the needed housing statutes with requiring the applicant to do parkland dedication in this instance. I'll go back to the prior application. As Tracy said at the outset, the last application, the one that the city council first approved tentatively and then ultimately denied, had both an expansion of the park and an extension of Demarco Road. And because that was a different kind of application, which included a zoning map amendment, which had some benefits to the applicant felt like they could make those improvements. We also didn't have the needed housing arguments, at least to the extent we do with this application. That's why the two are different. I wish the council would have approved that application. You would have had both the park expansion and Demarco, but that's water under the bridge. We're left now with a subdivision without a zoning map amendment. We're trying to do the best we can with the code, but unfortunately, the code doesn't have all the attributes that it should. So I probably don't need to repeat any of that. We'll have an opportunity, Chair Crosby, to make some additional argument and try and, if you have questions of us that we can't answer tonight, we'll try and answer those in our argument. But for all the reasons you've heard from me, from Tracy, and from Mike Ard, we hope that when you conclude your public hearing and close the record, that you'll find, in fact, we have met those criteria that you can actually apply and that you approve the application with reasonable conditions of approval. So thank you for your time tonight. And again, if you have questions of us, please ask us before you close the record. And one last thing, Chair Crosby, if you want to talk about an open record period other than what I've suggested or continuing hearing, we'd appreciate the opportunity to answer questions about that as well. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What I would like to do right now is to have David and Kelly, and actually all of us, have kind of map out the days ahead. And I'd like to go ahead and keep in mind when we would be revisiting this, so that as we are talking and discussing in a few minutes, that we all have in our mind, okay, where are we going with this? When am I going to have to deliberate, make a decision, and so forth. So the record has been requested to remain open for a total of 28 days. Would you review for us, David, what happens during those 3 periods?
Certainly. So maybe even just taking a step back, I think for most of you, this is, you understand this, but maybe, for some of the newer commissioners, it would be helpful. So at this first evidentiary hearing in this type of setting, when you're a quasi-judicial setting, when you're considering an application, whether to approve it or deny it, any party has the right to request a continuance, and we have to grant that. And then the option is either to actually continue it to a date certain, a future meeting, or leave the record open for additional written testimony. That was what I discussed with Mike Robinson. It's actually my preference when you get these requests, but it is up to you whether you want to. You have to do one or the other, either to continue it to a date certain, the hearing itself, or leave the written record open. If you go the route of leaving the written record open, which is what I recommend, then what we would have is essentially 3 periods. The first of which would be 14 days long. And during that time, any party can submit anything, really. New evidence, new argument, raise issues they didn't raise tonight, talk about their dog. Really, there's not much limitation on what somebody could submit if they want to put something in during that 14 days. I'm obviously being facetious. It wouldn't be wise to talk about your dog, but it's got to be relevant, right? Something relevant to this application. The second period then, so after that 14 days concludes, we'd have a second period that would be 7 days long. That period is meant for rebuttal, basically for people to respond to things that were raised during that initial 14 days, but not submit new evidence or new argument, new issues, basically. It's just meant to be responding to things that were raised during the first open record period. And then finally, the last 7 days is reserved for applicant argument. They have the choice of waiving that. Any applicant does, but basically that's the applicant, in light of everything, in light of this hearing, in light of the open record period, the applicant telling you why, based on all of that, you should still, presumably, should still or should approve the application. Then we would come back to the commission at a future meeting, and I think that's the piece that we ideally should figure out tonight. Otherwise, we'd have to renotice when that would be. But we would come back to the commission, and all we would do that night, at least with respect to this application, would be for the commission to deliberate. There'd be no more oral testimony. You wouldn't take any more argument, evidence, nothing. It would just be basically staff and presumably our office as well, saying, here's what you got during that period. Here's what our recommendation, summarize it. Here's what our recommendation is. Just like we would do if, for example, if right now the hearing were closed and you went in and you started deliberating based on what you had. You'd be doing that at a future meeting. And I think based on the commission's schedule and what you have on your docket, so to speak, coming up, it would be a matter of finding, at least from staff's perspective, maybe a special meeting date in early to mid-November to do that. But it would just be for that. I don't know if there's other questions, or that's generally how it would work.
No, I appreciate it. That's exactly what I was. It was helpful to me. I don't know about anybody else. So maybe somebody else has a question for you, but that was helpful.
And to be clear, that 14 days, it's any person. It's not just the applicant. It's not just the city. It's anybody that wants to submit, even if they weren't here tonight. I mean, they could submit, testimony during that initial 14-day period.
So David, it's kind of like just to make it really like basic, it's kind of like a 14-day additional public testimony open window.
Correct. Limited to just written testimony.
Correct. But yeah.
That's right. But if someone decided that, you know what, I'm going to go and hire a traffic engineer and have them evaluate the traffic, I mean, they could do that, whatever. It's any, there's not any limit to what could come in during that first 14 days. The distinction being that second period, you wouldn't be able to bring in a new traffic study like that, but you certainly could respond to one that was submitted during the 14 days.
And the only way that people would find out about the open record period is having heard here tonight, or somebody who heard it here tonight tells them. So there's no posting in the paper or notification or anything like that.
I would put a notice on Facebook and likely the city website as well. It probably wouldn't go up till later this week. But yes, consistent with Bailey Meadows, we would have some sort of information on the website and on Facebook, letting people know that there's like an additional
Okay.
14-day window.
And that's,
then Dave-
that's not a, I was
Oh,
just gonna say, that's perfectly fine, and especially in this day and age when it's pretty easy to get, you know, messages out online. But there's no legal requirement to do that. And it's not unlike the, you know, when if you were just to continue a hearing to a date certain, you know, word gets out, I suppose, and maybe, like I said, with the way you can communicate these days, it gets out a lot easier, but you wouldn't have to re-notice everybody saying, hey, this hearing's been continued. It's really meant to just keep people that have decided, you know, to participate in the loop.
Can I ask for one more clarification, just for all the people listening at home as well, and everybody on the call? So how does the city's additional testimony, essentially, or the city's additional input, when is the date for getting all that in there? So from all our consultants and stuff like that, our third-party traffic engineer, staff, city attorney's office.
So, you know, I think that if it's going to be evidence that's whether it's, you know, traffic, let's just take the traffic issue. I think that in fairness, we should be looking to do that along the same lines, you know, in terms of getting something in, if we feel it's necessary, the city were to feel it's necessary within that 14-day window, to allow the applicant, others to respond to that during the second open record period. As far as staff goes, my feeling is that ultimately you're going to be looking at everything that does come in, and providing, which I think you're entitled to do, a summary of that information to guide the planning commission when it does have its deliberation. I feel I'm entitled to do that as well. You know, but if we're going to be adding substance, or particularly any sort of expert kind of opinion or testimony, that should be coming in during the same time, so others have an opportunity to respond to it.
So that's what I remember from the previous time we did this on Bailey Meadows. But, you know, I don't know if John Replinger can look at a revised TIS and another memo and have comments to me in 2 weeks. I don't know his schedule. I don't know, you know what I mean? So I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess what I'd say is that, you know, that we run into this as well if the hearing is continued. You know, applicants are entitled to, you know, have a decision within a certain amount of time. So, I mean, obviously we can talk with the applicant about that being longer, but at some point, you know, we have to weigh that against the obligation to get through, if there's an appeal, to city council and get all that done by the 120-day deadline. So it's never perfect. I mean, unless you know for a fact that he wouldn't be able to, I think we need to kind of go on faith that he'll have to prioritize it, just like we all do. If there's something to even look at this point, I'm not sure.
David, clarify one thing for me. I heard the applicant's attorney talk about the 28 days to 7, you know, keeping the record open. I haven't heard anybody say they want to continue the hearing. Is that kind of assumed that they've asked that, or might have missed something here?
Well, Mike Robinson in his opening statement asked to leave the record open or have a continuance. It's an either or.
Okay, so we don't have to. We can deliberate tonight and do this.
Nope. No. Like I was saying, it's the first evidentiary hearing. Anybody, if the request is made, you have to do one or the other. You can't make a decision this evening, whether the applicant asks for it or another party.
I just thought that leaving the record open, continuing are two separate things. And you said or, so I guess I'm confused.
The commission has the choice to make. Most people will request, hey, I'd like to ask for more time. I want to have a continuance.
Right.
And at this first hearing, once that request is made, state law says, okay, yeah, you can't deliberate and make a decision tonight. At that point, though, it is the commission's choice as to whether A, you continue the hearing to a date certain. So you just pick up where we left off, additional public testimony, no guarantee that you're going to get anything in writing until that night. There wouldn't be any obligation to do that. Or your choice is to say, instead of continuing the hearing to a date certain, let's leave the record open. So we'll just get things in writing. And then at a future hearing, all we're going to be doing is deliberating.
So if we continue, we would probably have to do more or opportunity for additional public testimony.
You would, by
Via-
definition, be having
Okay.
additional public testimony. The thing, it's not about public testimony so much. That's the downside from my perspective. It's that you never really, the nice thing about having an open record period is that you get everything date certain about getting things in writing. You don't get record dumps, as we call them.
No
at that
ambush.
continued hearing, somebody coming in with another 1,000 pages of whatever, whether it's the applicant, somebody else, and then you're left with that night to figure out what to do. This way, you're setting up a situation where you've got X amount of time for everybody. The rules are the same for everybody to submit written information. And we're all sort of on the same page as to when that would happen and what can happen. And then you'll consider all of that with a summary from staff and make a decision at a future meeting. But it's your choice. I mean, it is. If you feel more comfortable saying, you know what, I just would prefer to continue the hearing entirely to a date certain, you absolutely can do that.
But either way,
you can't make a decision tonight.
I mean,
Okay. Hollis had her hand up, but need to unmute.
There,
There
I
you
have to unmute. Okay. David, I have a question. So, one of the things that I want to avoid is, getting these things at the last minute, like what happened this week and today, because it's hard if you're working all day like I do, to try and get everything read by the time the meeting starts. Is there any way that we can we tell people we need to have it a couple days in advance of the meeting?
Well,
is that a possibility?
That's effectively what an open record period would do. If you think about it, so it's
Okay.
going to be a 14-day period where stuff's coming in,
Mhm.
that'll go to staff.
Mhm.
And then there'll be a 7-day period where more could come in,
Mhm.
just responding to what is going to be during that 14 days.
Mhm.
And then the last 7 days, nobody can submit anything except the applicant. And it's really just a pitch as to why you should presumably approve the application. It's not going to be a new traffic study. It's not going to be an
Okay.
amendment to the application. So that's a big part of what I like about the open record period versus just a continuance is that, we set then a date for you to deliberate after all that comes in, and that affords everybody a reasonable amount of time to look at that stuff.
Okay.
And
Thank
does not, avoids the risk entirely of whatever date you were to pick, if you were just to continue the hearing, that you get all that information at once,
Mhm.
an hour before the hearing.
so that 28 days, puts us right to Friday before the next planning commission meeting. So if we do a date certain, it's probably got to be after the 25th of October, right?
I'll let Kelly speak to that, but we assumed it would not be your October 25th meeting.
Right.
It was going to be I don't know what the date is. I don't manage. Kelly's
Right.
got the understanding of what's going to be in front of you and what's coming, and so it would be another date beside. It would be a special meeting, I think, is what I
Well,
understand.
yeah, is there the clock affect this?
It could possibly.
Well, it's
We've gained 28 days.
Yeah, Mike Robinson's request automatically extends the clock, and I think they'll work with us as long as we're not going out months and months.
What I'd like to do, just kind of do a pause here. Yeah, okay, now I see raised hands. And I'll say what I was going to say, and then I'll go to the raised hands. I was wanting to kind of take a straw poll among ourselves as to which way we're leaning, whether towards the open record or a continuance. I think that'll maybe help us guide our thinking. But the first raised hand, I think, was Ron, Commissioner Lasowski.
It was actually Stephen.
Okay, then Commissioner Hook.
So my question is for David. With this open timeline, if we were to just do an open record, how would the Planning Commission be able to ask questions during this time so that we can have a good understanding during?
You really can't. There isn't really that opportunity, and that's why I think it's important, to the extent you have some, that you'd ask them this evening. Now, if your question is, well, maybe stuff comes in and I have questions about that, that is, I guess, a bit of a downside. I suppose we could structure something where questions could be asked. I've seen that before. And it's kind of put out there. If you anticipate having a lot of questions, probably that augurs in favor of having a continuance. I think the issues here are, I think they're mostly premised on legal issues. That isn't to say you wouldn't have questions. You certainly could. But it's a fair point. But I think it gets really tricky to somehow, have questions put back to everybody to be asked or answered. It's maybe the downside of this process. The upside being, though, that you know what's going to be in front of you. In my experience, 95% of the time, the issues are pretty well laid out with stuff that comes in writing during those open record periods. And you can always still ask questions of staff, of course, but yeah, it would practically limit the ability of the commission to engage in a dialogue at that point.
Okay, Commissioner Lasowski.
I was, Jerry, I like your idea about trying to find out where we're at so we can kind of move this along. But I was just going to, having done this before, it's just caution the commission to stay away from anything that could be considered debating or talking about how we feel about it this time. That's supposed to be reserved for when we get together next time. So mine was more of a caution to all of us. So that's it.
Watch the discussions in the grocery store.
Yeah. Yep. And tonight.
Okay, I'm just going down the way Zoom works. I think the raised hands go left to right. So Commissioner Mayton, looks like you're next.
Yeah, my question's kind of familiar as Commissioner Hooks for you, David. It's more about the legal interpretations that we're going to get out of the reading the letters that were sent by the applicants. So after I review all those letters, and what I've heard today is that there's a distinction between what the planning code says and what the planning code's clear and objective standards are legally. So my questions are all going to arise around what the legal interpretations are. And because I haven't read it, I don't know what questions I have until I do. So am I able to ask you questions by doing this continuation or this open period?
Yes, that's something that, just as you might in a deliberation, at that point say, okay, we've gathered all these facts and evidence and we've heard arguments from the applicant and the public, and now it's time, we've closed the hearing and we're going to deliberate and decide what to do here. In that context, it's very common that the commission would be asking questions both of staff and of the city attorney. And that would be the same thing here.
Thank you. That Chair, that was my only question, whether or not I would have access to the lawyer on our team. So,
Yes, you will.
thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Carlton.
Oh, David, quick question. I agree with Chris. Pretty much everything is kind of legal here. You know, this right now is 604 pages, you know, and Bailey Meadows got to be 1,200. And I'd lie to you to say I read it all. You know, I'm like, just cut to the chase. So what I'm wondering is if you are essentially going to look at what the applicant's argument is on, let's just say, dedication of parkland, pick something, okay? And that you will address that, and we will have that before, you know, our next meeting. In other words, that way I know the city's interpretation from a legal standpoint. I mean, I know what theirs is. 25 times they've said it's not clear and objective. Well, I mean, I've read the parkland dedication one here, and I see the word shall. What is not clear and objective about the word shall? Or does the word have to be will from a legal standpoint? You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you know, our time's valuable too. And we dedicate a lot of that time. So what I'm interested in is in a process here to where, like Kelly in his staff report has lined out, you know, certain things that he feels that should be denied. Okay. Some of those, obviously the two ones that meet the road are the parkland and Demarco. I mean, those are the heavy hitters, right? So what I'm interested in knowing is, I know what the applicant's going to give their recommendation. I want to know what your response is to that. So then we come to the hearing, we can kind of be expeditious and just work our way kind of through it.
Sure.
So,
yep.
I mean,
No,
so
that's
my
what I would-
point, and I think we had that on Bailey Meadows. I think you provided, you know, staff memo, I mean, to us. So that's just what I'm asking for. Because we can go to 100-foot tangents and this and that. Those are all technical things. To me, whoever meets the road, those are the two big items right there. All the rest of them can be solved by people talking, I would think, like they usually do.
Yes, yeah. So that's certainly what I would envision is giving the commission my take on it. I think the big issues, you're right. I don't know that it's in my purview or anybody's best interest for me to be getting down to the nitty gritty, like road tangents and things like that. But nevertheless, on those big things, it might. I mean, sometimes, you know, these applications can you know, sort of turn on what initially seemed to be the most mundane details. But I get your questions, you know, very valid. And yes, I would envision giving my take on these big meatier issues.
Well, at least I would ask Kelly. I mean, you work for Kelly, not me, but you know that you basically.
It doesn't work for me. He works for the city.
Well, you approve his invoices, so that's.
I don't actually. I don't.
But Don,
Okay.
Don, if I even saying what are some more meatier issues is kind of debating it. You know, we're kind of a little deliberation, I think, just even saying what's big.
I'm just telling you what I want. So that
Yeah,
I
wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think it's okay, and I totally understand. It's what I envisioned happening. So.
Okay, I need to go on. Commissioner Lee has had her hand up.
Yes, I'd like to understand better when you're preparing any documents, what the difference is in some of the standards based on needed housing versus other applications.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Don's right. Some of this is just going to be recycled from Bailey, and because a lot of it was discussed there, and but I can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, And I didn't remember the need factor coming up in that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kelly, you
Yeah,
you have
one
your
other
hand
thing
up.
yeah, I do. One other thing I want to raise actually, like I said, I don't feel comfortable in a lot of this because it's very technical and very, well, not technical. It's, my job's very technical, but it's very legal. And so I think a lot of what you guys need to hear from is our attorneys on this to make your decision. But what I do think we need, and I'm gonna say it publicly here and with David in the room and stuff too, is that anything where David agrees with the applicant ultimately on this and thinks that the code is not sufficient, I think almost concurrently with that letter, we need something from Barry, Elsner, and Hammond letting me know how to modify the code, so that we don't run into this again. So if you do ultimately decide that something's not sufficiently incorporated into our code, or that there is a very big, clear and objective issue that you agree with Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt, I think we need code edits following that immediately, because I think we need to clarify and make edits immediately if that is the case.
Yeah, that's true, because otherwise it's going to continue to haunt us. We
Otherwise the next applicant's gonna just, look at that memo and then that's how they make their application.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the next applicant's gonna come through and find some other angle to take on it and find the next. It really comes down to what's the spirit of the code that you're trying to get across and the intent, I think. So, I mean, it's a never ending cycle on those type of things of trying to clarify it.
Well, listen, I've been doing this long enough to kind of, I think, understand, the way to approach some of that.
Good.
And, we've been talking about these issues for a while now, so it's not new. I've not been asked to do that before. I certainly can. I talk with Jordan and others about, putting together language, but we'll get there, and we'll do it in a way that, if I have real concerns, I'll communicate that.
I kind of see it as like I think I might have mentioned this to David in the past. It's like a nesting doll, one of those Russian nesting dolls. You get rid of the biggest issues, but then there's other issues inside that, and it just keeps going forever, and there's no end to it. So
well, I really appreciate Kelly asking that. For example, council brought this up on Bailey Meadows, saying the TSP hasn't been integrated. Well, David, tell us what has to be integrated if that's the case. Yeah. I mean, if we change one line of language and pass it, maybe that's basically it. So I agree with Kelly, is that we should learn from each one of these if it is the case, and let's fix it and move on. On the other hand, if I struggle a little bit with the fact, we as a planning commission are here to interpret the code. How many times have we said that? People come up and ask for variances or whatever. Why? Because sometimes the square peg doesn't fit in a round hole, because you're trying to put a development on a piece of ground. So by definition, the code cannot be completely, if you made it exactly, you wouldn't have any variances, you wouldn't have any choices, and you'd have a whole bunch of problems. So there's got to be some happy mean there, and I hope Luba's got that figured out. So,
Do we need a motion to continue it, or?
Well, I'm not sure
not to continue it, to keep the record open. No, that's what I suggest.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I'd like to have a feel for where we're leaning, because those are the options, either to continue it or to keep the record open. And that would, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but that would be a motion one way or the other.
Yeah, I think you started out with the idea of doing kind of just a head nod, which way are people leaning? And then I agree, yes, it would be a matter of making a motion to that effect. And so, if it's going to be the continuance to a date certain, that I think before you decide if it's the open record period, we should talk about what would be the date that you would come back to deliberate.
Let's do the nod and find out which one.
So just do one for continue, or two for hold the record.
No, do it one at a time.
How many How many would lean towards keeping the record open? That's the one we've discussed the most tonight. I think, yeah,
unanimous,
I
Chair.
think
That's
everybody, so
everybody. Yeah.
that answers, okay, so here's what we need to do is, since we're gonna end up there, and what that means motion wise is we would close the public hearing tonight by motion, and in that motion, keep the record open for those dates, and probably in the same motion, state the date that we're going to meet.
That would be ideal. Yes, that way you're not having to, you wrap it all up in a nice bow and everybody that's taking part so far would know what to expect.
One caveat to that, and I don't know if they're still open to it, but the applicant's attorney said that, so they're extending it 28 days, which I believe puts it on October 25th. But he said that he would be open to potentially extending it a little bit longer to a meeting. And I'm always worried about the 120-day clock. So if we can get it extended even above that 28 days, just to whatever date you pick in November, I would be really excited to see that happen if we can make that happen here.
Well, he has got his hand up, so Mr. Robinson, you've got the floor if you had since we're still open.
Thanks, Chair Crosby. So two things. We're happy. I think we need to know what your date was that you want to deliberate. David explained it well to you. But I talked with my client this afternoon. We don't have a problem with further extension, but in order to do that, we need to know what the deliberation date is. But right now we've extended the clock 28 days, which is the period of the open record. And David's right, because it was our request that would happen anyway, but we wanted to say that. But Chair Crosby, if I can, may I ask David a question?
Oh, this will be fun, sure.
Okay.
You may not need to answer, David.
He's not on a witness stand.
There's a thing called the Fifth Amendment, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so just to be clear, David, the first 14-day period is, as you said, for anyone to submit argument and evidence, and that's fine. We might end up talking about our dog. That might be more fun. The second 7-day period, the way I phrased it, was for rebuttal with argument and evidence. So if someone wanted to do a little traffic study, I wanted to make sure that was okay. But I wanted to also emphasize you were correct. It's not new issues. It's just rebuttal with argument and evidence. Okay. And so I just wanted to clarify that. So Chair Crosby, if the commission wants to pick a deliberation date and then ask me about an extension, we'll grant that on the record. But we'd appreciate, to the extent you're able to, you're picking a deliberation date sooner rather than later, but we'll work with you on that.
Okay.
Can I mention one thing, Jerry, or Chairman? I would like our attorney and their attorney, if they could talk tomorrow, the next day, and pencil those dates out and exactly what can be submitted. So when we share it on the website and Facebook, that I don't get anything wrong, because it's kind of a negotiation between the two of them, exactly what those submittal requirements are.
It's not. It's just from the statute. We can give you more specificity in terms of what it means, but this isn't horse trading over what would be coming.
Well,
in.
Mike just asked
straight out
if
of
they
the
could.
Statute.
Well, Mike just asked if the second period could have additional stuff. I don't know. It just sounds kind of confusing to me for the public.
We'll lay it out so it's something that you can put on the website so it's really clear. But I think Mike's point was just that if something's submitted during that first 14-day period that would demand, in order to rebut what came in during, we'll make it clear for you.
Okay. So what days are we looking at? I think that's the next thing, because we're going to try and wrap this all up into one big motion. Kelly, can you help us on the calendar?
I mean, the dates I have open that I definitely could do it are Thursday, November 4th or Monday, November 8th. I would like to start with those 2 days being proposed.
Either one's fine with me.
Either one's fine with me.
I mean,
The 8th.
I'd prefer the 8th on a Monday like this.
Let me just, sorry.
Yeah, that actually gives, that gives 2 weeks. If you keep the 28th, now, you know, Kelly, you talked about extending it. I'd like to make sure we cut it off in enough time to where we have at least a week as a planning commission to
Yeah.
do a digest stuff. That's really what Hollis, I think, was asking earlier,
Okay.
is if even in general, for all of our planning commission meetings, can there be a cutoff from the stuff comes in
Yeah.
as opposed
So-
to 1 minute prior to the meeting?
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking too, Commissioner Carlton, is that the 25th, a week after, so a week after that, that would give Barry Elsner and him and staff an additional week to put together all materials. And then we would have it over to you on November 1st, a week ahead of your deliberation.
And then our deliberation would be on the 8th.
Yeah, that's why I was recommending 2
That
weeks
works.
later.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, I want to recognize Mr. Robinson because I'm just wondering if since we've thrown out 2 dates that perhaps neither one of them would work for them. So
Thank you, Chair Crosby. The 8th is fine with us. So we've already extended on the record the 120-day period by 28 days. And if my math is right, the record then would close on the record would close on the 25th.
Yeah.
And then it would be another 14 days to the 8th. So we would extend the 120-day period by another 14 days. So it would be a total extension of 42 days. Does that sound right, David and Kelly?
That is
Looks
correct.
right
Yeah.
to me. Yep.
Yep. The new
Yeah.
120-day clock would be January 5th. Is that what your math is telling you as well?
I hadn't gotten that far. I was just calculating the period. So it's 21, it's 28, which is the 4-week open record period, plus 14 days to get to deliberation on the 8th for 42 days. And that's Chair Crosby on the record, what the applicant will extend the clock by. Because it sounds
Okay.
like that's what would work for the commission.
okay, Commissioner Lee, you have your hand up.
Oh, yes, I cannot come on the 8th, but it looks like you'll have a quorum without me.
Okay, did the others, I know a couple said the 8th would work. How many of the 8th would work? Let's just see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we would have a quorum. Okay, I think we're where we can make this big motion.
I thought David said we had to close the public hearing.
Well, that's what it'd be. Okay, that would be 2 motions. One would be to close the, well,
Try
Well,
this
then-
out.
Keep the written record open, right?
yeah, so it's
So
going to
when,
be
though? Was it October 25th?
one motion to to close the public hearing now, keep the record open for 28 days, and we will reconvene on November 8th. Does that take care of it, David?
Yes,
I
and
move-
I'll just,
I
I'll
move
just
that.
add, I'll just add some gloss, just for everybody's benefit. That within that 20-day period, and we'll have this on the website tomorrow. First 14 days, anybody submits whatever they want. Second 7 days is responses to what was submitted initially. People want to have a response. And then that last 7 days of the 28-day period is reserved for the applicant.
It won't be on the website tomorrow, but it will be on there on Wednesday.
And one question I had on that, when you say the second period, people can respond, is that anybody? Or is it just the city or the applicant?
You know, anybody that
Anybody,
has,
okay.
anybody that's participating, it's really more of a response. It's focused more on issues that were raised during the first 14 days. So something comes in, has nothing to do with a thing that was talked about during the first 14 days. What would happen? We would say to the commission, we think you should reject that from the record. It's not responding to something that was already raised.
Okay.
But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It rarely
Mm-hmm.
happens, and if it does, we'll deal with it.
Okay, so just before I get to you, Commissioner Olszewski, is the motion is to close now, continue it for 28 days, and I think we can safely say, following the pattern that our attorney said, just put that into the motion and meeting on November 8th. But Ron, you had your hand up.
I have a motion
Oh,
I like to
Already
make the
moved.
motion that we move to close public testimony and keep the record open for 28 days. And within that period, the first 14 days will be for record submittal. The following days would be for rebuttal. The following days would be reserved for the applicant. And we move to a deliberation date certain of November 8th, 2021.
That works.
I second it.
been moved and seconded as Commissioner Lusowski has so aptly stated that bottom line, we will meet again on November 8th for this. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes.
and Chair Crosby.
Yes. Very well then. I gotta find my agenda. Oh, number 9 on the agenda says to say goodbye. We've already had our comments, so earlier on. But anybody have any final thing before we take a motion for adjournment? Suddenly, everyone gets quiet.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn at 9:46 PM, which is earlier than I anticipated, so I'm a happy camper. All in favor, let's just say voice, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any,
Aye.
any who dare be opposed? All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
And I'm
See you
sure
soon.
Kelly will
Thanks.
be in touch, and enjoy the rest of your week.